Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today is our last session on Ind AS 116. So we'll be taking you through most of the important aspects which are remaining. I think by now you would be fairly comfortable with what is a lease and how do we record a lease. Okay. And you would also be fairly comfortable with the terms which are there. Okay. So today's class will be a recap of all the things that we have done. So probably in the last two sessions, what all we discussed in a great deal of theory, I think that should be sorted out today. So I remember telling you that we may use Excel, but in order to again further save time, what I have done is I have solved the entire question set myself. So today I will be taking you through the solutions directly, and I'll share the Excel workings with you so that you can have a look at them later on. Okay, this is just to save time because today we are actually going to have a lot of problems, a lot of concepts, and all of that have to be done in the next about 2 hours 45 to 2 hour 50 minutes. Okay, it will be a little fast, but I'm confident that you will be able to understand the topic in a greater detail. Okay, so with that, we come back to what we had discussed in the last class. In the last session, we had completed the meaning of lease payments. Okay, when you talk about lease payments, it is one of the most important definitions apart from lease term, because lease payments and lease term combined will assist in determining the lease liability. So we discussed what do we mean by fixed payments. We discussed in substance fixed payments. We discussed lease incentives, variable lease payments. Purchase option price also will be added. Penalties for terminating the lease also we discussed. And we discussed a residual value guarantee. Residual value guarantee is essentially an amount that is paid by the lessee to the lessor, because see, ultimately the asset does not belong to the lessee. Ultimately it is the lessor's asset. So there could be some amount of carelessness, some amount of manhandling of the asset, due to which the worth of the asset would get reduced. So therefore, at the end of the lease tenure, there would be some kind of an expectation from the lessor that I should get a particular amount from the market. If I do not get that amount, it will be attributed to the lessee's negligence while handling the asset. That will be compensated. That compensation amount is known as guaranteed residual value by the lessee. Okay, so this will be added to the lease payments in the books of lessee. So with this, we then move on to the next part. Okay, so I leave these questions for homework. They are simple illustrations. वो please कर देना आप लोग. Okay. All of these are simple questions. You can do them for homework. These are not any practical problems. They are simple illustrations. Okay. So this also I leave it for homework. Okay. Today I will come to the problems where there are a lot of accounting calculations which are involved. So these theory questions jo hai chote chote, I leave it for homework. You should be in a position to do that. Okay, because I feel that from an examination perspective, today's session will be more related to the problems which you expect in examinations. So I would like to do more of that. Okay, so coming to our next discussion, that is initial direct cost and discount rate. These are two important things. Out of that, discount rate is most important. See, ultimately, when we discussed the lease liability, we spoke about present value of lease payment. So present value means we have to talk about discount rate. So that is why lease payments, lease term, and discount rate, these are the three crucial things which are needed for carrying out my present value calculations. Okay, so now coming to initial direct cost. What do you mean by initial direct cost? It refers to the incremental cost of obtaining a lease. It refers to the incremental cost of obtaining a lease that would not have been incurred if the lease had not been obtained. So who do you think will be incurring this? Typically, it is the lessee who will be incurring this. So incremental cost to obtain the lease. That means the lessee needs an asset on lease. So he will probably be paying certain commission to a broker, certain legal fees, etc., etc. So these are costs to obtain the lease. Okay, incremental. Matlab lease agreement is it is at least you have arrived at a consensus. You know that the lease is going to come to you. So therefore you incur these incremental costs. Okay, so this is typically incurred by the lessee. Okay, some items such as traveling expenses, tender fees, legal fees before execution of lease, all these are not incremental cost because you are going to incur them irrespective of whether you got the lease or you did not get the lease, and therefore they are excluded from the purview of initial direct cost. Okay, so IDC is only those costs which are incurred for the purpose of getting the lease contract. Okay, and then finally we move on to discount rate. What do you mean by discount rate? It is the rate used to find the present value of lease payments. So what will be my discount rate? One is it will be the interest rate implicit in the lease. That is your lessor's IRR. Okay. IRR means what? It is that rate of return, internal rate of return, which equates present value of outflow to the present value of inflow, which equates the present value of outflow to the present value of inflow. Whose inflow, whose outflow? Well, the lessor's internal rate of return. We will come to this in one of the problems where we will be discussing about manufacturer lessor and pure lessor. Okay, so that time you will come to know specifically what do I mean by lessor's IRR. It will be a part of today's discussion. If the above is not determinable, the lessee's incremental borrowing rate. So I leave you with a question right now. Don't scratch your head a lot on that. Okay, a simple question is, see, I am in the books of lessee. Lessee has to recognize the ROU asset. Lessee has to recognize the lease liability. The question is, which discount rate will you use? The standard says use the lessor's IRR. The question that I leave you with is, how is it possible that the lessee will know the lessor's internal rate of return? That is the question which I'm leaving you with. I'll give the answer just a couple of minutes down the line. Okay, when we discuss accounting for the lease arrangement, that time we will be discussing. Okay, accounting for lease in the books of the lessor, that time we'll be discussing this. Okay, but until then, just park this question. If lessor's IRR cannot be calculated, then you can use the lessee's incremental borrowing rate. Specifically, they have said borrowing rate, not weighted average cost of capital. Why not weighted average cost of capital? I told you the standard is always of the opinion that a lease is an alternative to borrow and buy. Okay, a lease, you are taking an asset on lease because you cannot buy the asset. Okay, so it is an alternative to borrow and buy. So what do you mean by borrow and buy? Well, borrow and buy means you are borrowing the funds and taking an asset and repaying the loan. So lease is always considered as that form of an arrangement by the standard setters. Lessor's IRR, we'll discuss this part later. Okay, we'll discuss this part later. There is something known as unguaranteed residual value. We'll discuss this part also later when we do accounting for the lessor. Is it okay so far? Are you okay? Hi Soham, Kaushiki and Srishti. So far, is it okay? Yes, good morning all of you. Is it okay so far? Abhi tak I have not discussed much. I have just entered into the theory that is pending. Okay, all right. So we then move on to small exemptions. Okay, chota sa topic hai, exemptions for the lessee. See, the very first day I told you there is a radical shift in the way leases are perceived. What is the radical shift? Well, in the case of the lessee, every lease arrangement is going to give rise to a right of use asset and a lease liability. Remember the very first day we took the session. Okay, I think we took the session of PVR and INOX, and then I gave you an example of how comparability is affected. And because of that comparability getting affected, I told you how that shortcoming was plugged with the introduction of Ind AS 116. Now, The problem with Ind AS 116 is it is not easy to implement. Lot of complications are there. See, academically you find it kya hai, present value to nikalna hai. But if you look from the perspective of practical life, you will have to first determine what is my discounting rate. You will have to determine what is the lease tenure. You will have to find out the variable rents. You will have to see if there are any in substance fixed payments. Matlab, you have to pour over tons and tons of documentation. Okay. And sometimes you are having entities which have 10, 12, 15 lease agreements. Imagine a company like Reliance or Unilever having hundreds and thousands of lease agreements for their factory facilities. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy job. Okay. So therefore, the standard has given an optional exemption. Okay. What is this optional exemption and to whom it is available? It is for the lessee. It is for the lessee. Now, when you talk about optional exemption, suppose you have entered into a lease agreement for a period less than 12 months. For a period less than 12 months. Office space liya hai, and the office space is for a period less than 12 months. Okay. So what the standard gives you the option is, you don't recognize ROU asset or lease liability. Straight away take it as an operating lease and expense the lease rentals to the profit and loss account. If I have a short-term lease, what is a short-term lease? A lease tenure less than 12 months. A lease tenure less than 12 months from the commencement date, and there is no purchase option. So if that is the case, then you can avail this exemption. Let us look at the implications of this. See, if you had to recognize an ROU asset and a lease liability, what would happen? ठीक है, शौक के लिए, purely out of obsession and passion, I will recognize an ROU asset and a lease liability. कर दिया. ROU asset will be depreciated over the lease tenure. Depreciated lease tenure is less than 12 months. That means the ROU asset will be depreciated over 10 months. Yes. The lease liability will be amortized over 12 months. That means you will have a finance cost appearing over 12 months. End mein, what have you achieved? What have you achieved in the end? In the end, ultimately, ROU asset is fully depreciated. Finance cost is going to come. So these two costs put together will ultimately be equal to the lease rentals that you are recognizing over the 12-month period, provided they are expensed to the P&L. So आपने क्या हासिल किया? What have you achieved? Nothing. You just went and did huge amount of calculations, which was not required, because the true and fair view is there in both the places. So therefore, the exemption is given for a short-term lease, wherein if the lease is less than 12 months, then you can recognize it as an expense in the profit and loss account. You can recognize it as an expense in the profit and loss account. Is it okay? Yes. So this is to be recognized for a class of underlying assets and not lease by lease, So suppose you are having a furnished flat. So for that furnished flat, you choose to recognize renting of furniture by this exemption. And for the flat, you choose to take it as an ROU asset. Go ahead, do that. It's absolutely fine. So you will have to break down the lease into the components of the lease, and then you will have to exercise the choice. Okay, so this is the first lease exemption that is there. Okay, so the lease payments would be directly recognized as rental expenses in the P&L, either on a straight line basis or any other systematic basis if available, similar to a treatment as an operating lease under Ind AS 17 or AS 19. If you remember, we used to recognize an expense in the profit and loss account. Here also we will do very much the same. Now, if this is one exemption, the other exemption is low value items. Unfortunately, low value assets are not specifically defined. IFRS 16, जहां से ये asset, जहां से ये standard आया है, IFRS 16 defines low value asset to be an asset whose value does not exceed $5,000. But yahan pe it is not defined like that. Okay. So the following, it is a matter of judgment. Okay. Kidhar bhi likha nahi what is a low item. Okay. So, but it gives 2-3 guidance points. One is assets which are highly interrelated or interdependent with other assets. These assets are not going to be meeting the criteria of a low value asset. For example, tires and a car. You cannot say tire is independent of the car. Tire and car are interdependent. They will move together. Okay. So you cannot say that tire is a low value item. So therefore, for the tire, I will apply operating lease exemption. For the car, I will apply ROU asset classification. You cannot do that. Okay. Secondly, a laptop or a mobile is generally independent. Okay, so you can recognize these as independent assets and do the recognition as if it is an operating lease. And finally, you have it as a head lease. You have something known as a head lease, which is what is the lease classification in the case of a sublease arrangement. Sublease arrangement. Okay. The choice needs to be taken on a lease by lease basis and not for an entire class, not for an entire class. Okay. So for example, you have laptops. Okay. The management has entered into 2 lease agreements. One lease agreement is for the management, which gets high-end laptops. The other one is for the working staff, which gets medium range laptops. Now, the entity, these are 2 lease agreements. So the entity may choose that the management laptops, we will recognize ROU asset and lease liability. For the working staff laptops, we can treat them as operating lease arrangements and do the accounting. That is how it's going to happen. So these are the 2 exemptions which are available. It is an optional exemption. Important is optional. Matlab, करना ही है नहीं, आप चाहते हो then you can recognize ROU asset, lease liability and do the accounting. But there is an optional exemption. Why was this exemption introduced? See, ultimately when you talk in terms of the framework for financial reporting, there is something known as cost benefit analysis. For each of the requirements that you have as far as reporting is concerned, there is a particular cost which is involved. Now, by spending that cost, if you are improving the presentation, giving a better view, giving a true and fair view, go ahead, incur the cost, get the benefit. But suppose end result may with something easier, you give the same true and fair view, I might as well go for the easy option, right? So therefore, for the cost benefit analysis enshrined in the conceptual framework, such exemptions are available in the Ind AS, which entities can avail, and more often than not, they do avail the exemptions. Okay. All right. So this one I leave it for homework. Okay. Kuch khas hai nahi. Okay. And now what will happen in the case of an ROU asset? How will the journal entries flow? How will the journal entries flow? First one, if optional exemption is availed, then the entry will be rental expenses account debit to bank. No ROU asset, no lease liability. सीधा सीधा entry है, बात खत्म. In all other cases, we are going to pass the entry ROU asset account debit to lease liability. Okay, ROU asset account debit to lease liability. Simple entry. Okay. How will I measure the lease liability? Well, it is the present value of all future lease payments. We have seen in one of the small examples which I took. Take the lease payments, bring it to present value. That will be the value of the lease asset. Subsequently, so you would discount it at the interest rate implicit in the lease. They're talking about IRR. Alternatively, you can use incremental rate of borrowing. Subsequently, this liability would change due to finance cost, due to lease payments and due to lease modifications or reassessment. ये 3 चीजों की वजह से your transactions are going to change. The lease liability would be similar to accounting for financial liabilities on an amortized cost basis. Ultimately, lease liability is a monetary liability. It is a defined sum of money which you are going to pay. So it will be a similar accounting like financial liabilities on an amortized cost basis. Okay. Now the question is, How will I measure the ROU asset? So first one, the entry is coming from lease liability. So ROU asset account debit to lease liability. So this is the very first item, lease liability, which is going to come. Okay, that means this entry. The first thing that will be added in the ROU asset is lease liability ka jo value hai, that will go in the ROU asset. Okay. Add payments before commencement date, before the commencement date. That is payments made between lessor and lessee. Payments made between the lessor and lessee. So this will be added to your ROU asset. Lease incentive received before the commencement date. After the commencement date goes in lease payments. I hope you remember lease incentives we discussed. After the commencement date, it will go in lease payments. Before the commencement date, it will be added to ROU asset. Add initial direct cost incurred by lessee. IDC is typically between the lessee and the third party. So we will add it to the cost of the asset. And present value of site restoration or decommissioning obligations. Again, this is between the lessee and the third party. So this is the counter or the double entry where it is hitting. So if I sum total give the journal entry, I will recognize ROU asset account debit to lease liability credit. You can see credits are positive figures, to provision for site restoration, and the bank is ultimately netted off and shown as one figure. Okay, the choice is yours. वो मैंने बस net off कर दिया है. Is it okay? Yes. Have you understood lease liability and ROU asset working? Yes. Have you understood this part? Yes or no? ये part सबसे important है. Okay. Then we move on to accounting. You can have a look at how the numbers are flowing. Okay. See, typically standards like 115, 116, 103, 110, all these standards are heavy in concepts. Okay. All these standards are heavy in concepts. That is why we spend a lot of time trying to explain theory so that we are comfortable with the terminologies that are used. Okay. Is it okay? Yes. Kaushiki Sidhwani, you are saying problem. What is the problem, Kaushiki? Tell me. Yes. Good morning, Saksham. All right. So that is fine. Let's move on to the next one. Subsequently, how are you going to treat the ROU asset? Well, we will depreciate and also check for impairment. We will depreciate as well as check for impairment. Okay. And then if there is any lease reassessment or modification, we will do that reassessment or modification. Okay. Depreciation typically will be over the lease term, but if there is a purchase option and you're likely to exercise it, then depreciate over the entire useful life. Okay. The above is what is the accounting even for leases in perpetuity. For example, a holding may give a holding company may give an asset to subsidiary perpetuity. Okay, बस तू मेरे को lease rent देते जा, this asset belongs to you only. So for those type of lease arrangements also, ROU asset will be recorded in perpetuity. Okay, all right. Kaushiki has a problem. Okay, all right. So you want me to explain ROU asset once again? No problem. We will discuss. Okay, I'm a little fast, I know. Okay, see, first one is the very first entry you will pass right of use asset to lease liability. To lease liability. Okay. So this is where the ROU asset is taking birth. This is where the ROU asset is taking birth. Okay. I'll give a problem on ROU asset. Don't worry. Okay. Once this is done, see, it may be possible that you have made some payments before to the lessee. Some payments before to the lessee. There is no lease liability at that point of time. Lease liability crystallizes on the commencement date. आपने commencement date से पहले payment किया, so there would be an ROU asset. So ROU asset account debit to bank. Okay. The third case, lease incentives received before. This is the lease incentives. The lessor is paying to the lessee. So bank account debit to ROU asset. Okay. And then finally, initial direct cost, ROU asset to bank, same entry. Site restoration also similar entry. Okay, means ROU asset to provision for site restoration. All of that clubbed, we have put it together. Okay, so we will take up a question now. Now we will start working on the questions. Okay. All right. So with this, I think it should be fairly comfortable now that we start the problems. Okay. With the problems, I'm sure you will be comfortable with the way the questions are going to get with the theory that we have covered. Okay. So I have already done these problems. I'll take you through the problems. Don't worry. Okay. Entity L enters into a lease for 10 years. Okay. With a single lease payment payable at the beginning of each year. See, you read the question 10 times, 15 times, 20 times to understand when the lease payment is being made. When the lease payment is being made. Because if you get this wrong, the discount rate will be wrong. And if the discount rate will be wrong, the whole problem will be wrong. तो आपका जो entire मेहनत जो आपने किया रहेगा एग्जाम में, you would have done a lot of working because the standard is like that. You will do a lot of working, but end result, if you don't know when the lease payment is happening at the beginning or at the end, your entire foundation will collapse. Okay, you will come from the exam all thinking lease question was the best question, सीधा module से आ गया, क्या आसान question था. But when you look at what you have done, that time you will feel very bad about it. Okay, the initial lease payment is rupees 1 lakh. Lease payments will increase by the rate of LIBOR each year. So that means this is which type of payment, sir? This is a variable payment. This is a variable payment. Why? Because it is linked to a rate. It is linked to a rate. Okay. LIBOR is 2%. Assume that the interest rate implicit in the lease is 5%. What is this? This becomes my discount rate. This becomes my discount rate. How is the lease liability initially measured? How is the lease liability initially measured? I have done the question for you, and I think you will also, if as long as you have your calculators in hand, you should be in a position to understand the workings. Okay. See, the lease liability is paid at the beginning of the year, is paid at the beginning of the year, means in advance, So therefore, today's liability, when I pay, the discounting factor will be 1. The discounting factor will be 1 because payment aaj hi ho raha hai. Payment is happening on the first day of the year, of the month. So therefore, the first payment will not be discounted. The first payment will not be discounted. Okay. So for year 1, the time period for discounting factor is 0. Matlab today only the payment is happening. For year 2, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. What are your lease payments? Sir, today I have to determine. That is, this is on the commencement date. This is on commencement date. They have said what will be initial measurement of lease liability. What will be initial measurement of lease liability? So therefore, this is on the commencement date. In the future, when the cash flow changes, we will again do a reassessment. We will again do a reassessment. But abhi ke liye, that data is not given. So we will proceed to calculate the lease liability. So 1 lakh with a 2% increase. You can see there is a 2% increase every year, every month, month or year. Every year there is a 2% increase. So 1 lakh becomes 1 lakh 2,000, 1 lakh 4040. So if you have your calculators, take 1 lakh on that plus 2%, you can see 1 lakh 2,000 plus 2%, you can see 104040, so on and so forth. Okay. So these are the lease payments you estimate will happen in the future. Now, let us see the discounting factor, that is 5%. So 0.9524, you know how to calculate the discounting factors. Okay, so that comes to this, and then you multiply it to give the present value. So this comes to 8,80,751, 880,751. Institute answers has given it as 880,887. Nothing wrong in both the answers. Institute has rounded off. We have not rounded off. We have taken the full decimals. So therefore, both the answers are correct. In your examination, you can always write rounded off to 2 decimals, rounded off to 3 decimals, so that the examiner knows that you have considered a rounding off. So that small gap, whatever is there, it will not go adversely against you. It will not go adversely against you. So this gives us my present value, 880751, 880751. Okay. Moving on to the next one. So the entry that you are going to pass on the first day is ROU asset to lease liability, right of use asset to lease liability, 8,80,751. This ROU asset will be depreciated over the life. What about the lease liability? We will amortize the lease liability. How do I amortize? See, it starts with 8,80,000. There is a first payment that happens. So minus 1 lakh. So adjusted opening balance is 7,80,000. On that, you take 5%. So that gives you the closing balance. Do this series of steps for 10 years. End of the 10th year, you will notice that your lease liability comes to 0. Your lease liability works out to 0. Have you understood this part? Yes. Have you understood this? Is it okay? Yes. Have a calculator to just test check the workings. Have a calculator to just test check the workings. Okay. All clear? Yes. Kaushiki, first question is clear. Srishti, Kaushiki, Soham has confirmed. Saksham, where are the others? Sir, interest will not always be calculated on opening balance. Here, what has happened is repayment is happening at the beginning of the period. Sometimes it may happen at the end of the year. So when that is happening, it will be opening plus interest minus repayment. Okay. We have a couple of questions where payment happens at the end. That time I will show you that lease payment is happening separately. That time lease payment is happening only on opening, not on the adjusted. Yahan pe it is happening first, and then you are having a balance. So therefore it is on adjusted opening balance. Is it okay? Yes, Srishti, did you follow? You can see the question at the beginning of the year. Yes, is it clear? Simple si baat hai na. You have paid 1 lakh at the beginning. So why are you going to pay interest on that? You will not pay any interest on that. You will pay on the reduced balance or the adjusted balance. Okay. So this is the first question that we have done. Okay. All right. Entity Y and entity Z execute a 12-year lease of a rail car with the following terms on 1st Jan. The lease commencement is 1st February 20x1. Okay. Entity Y must pay entity Z the first monthly rental of rupees 10,000 upon execution of the lease. Entity Z will pay entity Y 50,000 cash incentive to enter into the lease payment upon lease execution. Entity Y incurred 1,000 of initial direct cost which are payable on 1st February 20x1. Y calculated initial liability as the present value of lease payments discounted using its incremental borrowing rate, because the rate implicit in the lease could not be readily determined. The initial lease liability is 8,50,000. How would the lessee company record and measure this lease? How would the lessee company record and measure this lease? Okay. So, let us understand. सबसे पहले, the initial lease liability is already recognized at 8,50,000. Yes. So the entry that would be passed is ROU asset to lease liability, 8,50,000. 8,50,000. Okay. Now there is a payment which must be made. Y is the lessee, Z is the lessor. Y is the lessee, Z is the lessor. Y must pay Z the first payment of 10,000 upon execution of the lease. So execution of the lease means the date when you actually sign the agreement. The date when you actually sign the agreement. Is it the same as commencement date? Could be, could not be. It could be or it could not be. What is the commencement date? The date when the asset is available for use. The date when the asset is available for use. Nonetheless, when there is a payment that flows, you will credit bank account. You will credit bank account with how much? 10,000. You will credit with 10,000. Where will the debit go? Sir, the debit will go to ROU asset. The debit will go to ROU asset. So ye ho gaya. Entity Z, that is the lessor, will pay entity Y an incentive to enter into the lease payable agreement. So have you entered into an agreement? No. So is this before commencement or after commencement? Sir, this is before commencement. So here you are receiving the amount. So bank account debit to ROU asset, to ROU asset. So that is 50,000. That is 50,000. Okay. And finally, there is an initial direct cost which gets added to the asset. So ROU asset to bank, 1,000. So this is your lease. So how would you, at what value would you record? 8,50,000 plus 10,000 plus 1,000 minus 50,000, minus 50,000. So 8,50,000 plus 10, 8,60,000 plus 1, 8,61,000 minus 50. So ROU asset end May, it is coming to how much? 8,11,000. Have you understood this? Yes. Have you understood this part? Excellent. Yes, that's right, Kaushiki. Others, did you follow? Srishti, did you follow? Shailendra, Saksham, Aniket, Soham, all clear? Okay. Clear. Okay, great. Srishti, no answer. Sir, how do you know that it was before commencement? Look at the words. Upon execution of the lease. Upon lease execution. So where have they said it is after commencement? They have not said after commencement, no? So execution mein kya ho sakta hai? Either asset will be available or it will be available at a later date. They have not mentioned commencement at any point of time. Execution means what? You have just entered into an agreement. You can call it inception. You can call it inception. Inception is always before commencement. Okay. Inception is always before commencement. Execution is you are agreeing to the terms of the lease. That's it. Okay. So we call it as before commencement. Yes. Is it clear? Okay. तो इसके लिए ना क्या करना पड़ेगा? हमें क्वेश्चन संभल कर पढ़ना पड़ेगा. We have to read the question a couple of times in detail so that we understand. Okay. All right. This one I will leave it for homework. Okay. All right. Okay. Following payments at the end. All right. Illustration 30. Have I done illustration 30? No. I will leave illustration 30 for homework. It is simple. I'll explain to you. ABC enters into a 3-year lease of equipment, agreeing to make the following payments: 20, 30, and 50. For simplicity purposes, there are no other elements like purchase option, lease incentives, initial direct cost. ये सब कुछ भी नहीं है, खाली 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 का पेमेंट है और बात खत्म. Assuming a discount rate of 12%, assume a discount rate of 12%, ABC depreciates the ROU asset on a straight line basis over the lease term. How would entity ABC account for the said lease under 116? Now, extremely simple. Okay, it's extremely simple. See, 20, 30, 50. These are my outflows. What is your discount rate? 12%. So 12% for the first year, 12% for the second year, 12% for the third year. Sir, आपको कैसे मालूम first year भी आएगा? Last case में you said it is 1. Look at the words. When is the payment being made? At the end of each year. At the end of each year. And because payment is happening at the end, first pehle payment also there will be a discounting factor. For the first payment also there will be a discounting factor. So what will be your discounting factors? लेने का बात ही चल रहा है. Let us take it. 1 divided by 1.12, 0.8929. Okay, divided by 1.12, 0.7972, divided by 1.12, 0.7118. All that you need to do is multiply into 20,000. I'm not rounding off, so this comes to 17,857. 30,000, 23,916, and last one, into 50,000, 35,589. So if you total this up, 35,589, 23,916, 17,857. Excellent. Soham, 77,362. 77,362. This is the value at which your ROU asset will be recognized. Lease liability will be recognized. 77,362 will be depreciated over 3 years. 77,362 by 3. 25,787. This is depreciation. और क्या बोलेंगे? Amortization of lease of ROU asset. ROU asset. How am I going to recognize my lease liability? Well, it looks something like this. We start with 77,362. There is no payment which happens now. Instead, there will be an interest component. 77,362 into 12%. 12%, no? Yes. So 9,283. You are then going to pay 20,000. So now see 77,362 plus 9,283 minus 20,000. 66,645. So see, there is no adjusted opening balance here, Srishti. 66,645 into 12%, 7,997. You are then going to pay 30,000. So 44,642 into 12%, 5,358. So आप देंगे 50,000. बाद में this liability comes to 0. 5,358. It matches. Perfectly matches. Did you understand? Yes. All of you, did you follow? Srishti, did you follow? Saksham, did you follow? Kaushiki has confirmed. Soham has confirmed. Yes. Have you followed this example? It's 2 line ka example. Yes. Did you follow? All right. So then we move on to the next part. Subsequent measurement using cost model. Okay. Okay, fine. Simple question, eh? Nothing to be panicking. Okay. Company EFG enters into a property lease with entity H. The initial lease term is 10 years with a 5-year renewal option. Okay. The economic life of the property is 40 years. Fair value is 50 lakhs. EFG has an option to purchase the property at the end of the lease term for 30 lakhs. The first advance annual payment is 5 lakhs with an increase of 3% every year thereafter. Implicit rate of interest is 9.04%. Entity H gives company EFG an incentive of 2 lakhs payable at the beginning of year 2, which is to be used for normal tenant improvement. EFG is reasonably certain to exercise the purchase option. How would EFG measure the ROU asset and lease liability over the lease term? Just go through the question once. Go through the question quickly once. Go through the question quickly once. Okay. All right. So we have done this also. So let us understand how the calculations flow. Sir, is there an option to is there an option to renew? Yes, there is a 5-year renewal option. Is there an option to purchase? Yes, there is an option to purchase. Is it reasonable that the option to purchase or renew will be exercised? Sir, option to purchase will be exercised. That means what will be factored in my lease workings? One is the lease payments that happen annually, and second is the payment that you are making for purchasing the asset at the end. So these are the two cash flows which you will factor. There is a third cash flow, which is a lease incentive flowing from lessor to lessee. When is it happening? At the beginning of year 2. That means, is it happening after commencement or before commencement? Sir, it is happening after commencement. Matlab, after commencement means what? ROU asset also is there, lease liability also is there. So how am I going to recognize? Well, this will go towards reducing my cash flows. This will go towards reducing my lease liabilities, and therefore we will deduct it from the payments. We will deduct it from the payments. Okay. So with this background, let us start. When is the lease payment going to be done? Advance. They have used the word advance annual payment. Advance annual payment. That means, is it made at the beginning of the year or end of the year? It is made at the beginning of the year. So let us look at how the payments are flowing. 1 lakh at the beginning. What is the payment which you are making, sir? 5 lakhs. Discount rate is 9.04%. They have given it as 9.04, but I took the entire decimal. Okay, I have taken the entire decimal just to show that implicit interest means it will come to 50 lakhs. Otherwise, it would come to 49 lakh 99,764. Ultimately, you would be rounding it off to 50 lakhs. Okay, but I had the luxury of using an Excel sheet, so I could find this rate of 9.04087927%. Okay, but it is okay, not an issue. All right, आपने round off किया तो भी चलेगा, not an issue. It won't create much of a problem. Okay. So now first payment 5 lakhs is made in advance. So no discounting for that. 5 lakhs will be paid today. The next payment will increase by 3%. So 5 lakh plus 3%, but you are getting an incentive of 2 lakhs. So minus 2 lakhs is equal to 3 lakh 15,000. So second payment is 3 lakh 15,000. This payment is 3 lakh 15,000. Okay. This is 3 lakh 15,000. All right. Now we then move on to the next payment. The next payment is the 3% increase, the 3% increase. Okay. So 5 lakh 15 plus 30% plus 3%. 5,15,000 plus 3%, that gives you 5,30,450. That gives you 5,30,450. And then it is a usual calculation. Every year there is a 3% increase. At the end of year 10, you are procuring this asset for 30 lakhs. So that 30 lakhs also is factored. That 30 lakhs also is factored. What will be your discount rate? 1.9171, etc., etc. ऐसे करते करते, this is going to be your discount rate. So your present value comes to 50 lakhs. Your present value comes to 50 lakhs. Have you understood so much? Anybody has any doubts here? Anybody has any doubts here? Yes. अभी तक समझ में आ गया? Or anybody has any doubts here? Yes. Yes. Is it clear so far? On what basis we take 5-year renewal and purchase option? Okay. So now look at the question. See, they have said that company EFG is reasonably certain to exercise the purchase option. So we will take the purchase. Once I purchase the asset, why will I renew that 5-year option? Asset to mere paas aa raha hai na after 10 years. So again, 5-year renewal kyun hoga? If the question had to specify the company is likely to extend by another 5 years, then we will take the lease period as 15 years. But right now I am buying the asset. So renewal ka to option hoga nahi, because asset will be with me only. So therefore that 5-year renewal is not relevant in this case. It's not relevant in this case. Question will specify. Okay. Amortization of lease liability. So same thing, 50 lakh start karo. First repayment, adjusted opening balance, interest at 9.0408 whatever percentage, that leaves you with the closing balance. You do this for 10 years. In the 11th year opening, your balance comes to 0. Your balance comes to 0. Have you understood? Lease liability amortization. Sir, where it is indicated that lease payment is at the beginning. ये देखो, मार्क करके रखा है आपके लिए. Advance annual payment. Advance annual payment. Advance means what? At the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year. Okay. Kaushiki's doubt solved. Soham's doubt solved. Aniket Jain confirmed. Sumit Jain is not there. Balram is not there. That girl Sandhya Gauri is not there. No problem. Okay, so that is done. Next, see, the whole thing is on when the payment happens. इसमें गड़बड़. I had one student, उसने बहुत अच्छे से solve किया था. He had done very nicely the entire examination. He was very confident of 60 to 70 plus in his exam. This had come in one of the attempt for 10 or 12 marks. I'm not very sure. Okay, lease के related question था. But he read or interpreted the years wrongly. Okay, तो वो एक साल का उसने आगे पीछे कर दिया, and then the whole effort that he put in went to waste. Okay, and then ultimately he could not get an exemption also. So it is so important for us to read the question very, very carefully. Okay, आप question ध्यान से पढ़ोगे, you will get the solutions there only. So spend 2 to 3 minutes more to read the question paper, because that will decide your success. Okay, so you should get your questions and the facts in the question correctly. Okay, next one. Okay, ये छोटा सा क्वेश्चन है relating to foreign currency. See, I pass the entry ROU asset account debit to lease liability. You would have studied AS 11. तो सेम प्रिंसिपल्स है, डोंट हैव टू वरी सर फॉरेन लीजेस है क्या है, ऐसे वैसे कुछ नहीं है, इट्स सिंपल. ओके, ROU asset account debit to lease liability. ROU asset is a non-monetary asset, is a non-monetary asset. So what am I going to do with this ROU asset? Well, this ROU asset, I will state it at the historical rate, the rate on the date the transaction was entered into. एंड वो वैसे ही रेट पे आएगा. लीज लायबिलिटी इज अ मॉनेटरी आइटम. And as per AS 11 you have studied, or Ind AS 21 that we are having right now, all monetary items have to be restated to the closing rate. So lease liability has to be restated to the closing rate. So when I restate to the closing rate, there has to be another place where that restatement gain or loss should be recorded. That place where it will go is the P&L. P&L on account of fluctuation, exchange fluctuation. बस यही है और कुछ नहीं है. Nothing else is there. Whatever is going to go, it will go to the P&L account, the difference. Okay, so we have a small question on this. Okay, it is there here. I had solved it in the previous batch. I'll be taking that same question only. Okay, 1 second yaar. Classroom notes किधर गया किधर. Okay, all right. So let us start with this question. Entity X is an Indian entity whose functional currency is the INR. It has taken, functional currency means वो Ind AS 21 का term है. Forget about that for right now. अपना करेंसी है भाई, इंडियन है, रुपया चलता है. ओके, इट हैज टेकन अ प्लांट ऑन लीज फॉर फ्रॉम एंटिटी वाई फॉर 5 years to use in the manufacturing process, for which it has to pay annual rents in arrears of $10,000 every year. Rents in arrears. In arrears. In arrears means what? Payable at the end of each year. At the end of each year. Okay. On the commencement date, exchange rate was $1 equal to rupees 68. The average rate for year 1 was 69. End of year 1, the rate was 70. Incremental borrowing rate of entity X on commencement of the lease for a US denominated borrowing was 5% per annum. How will entity X measure the right of use asset and lease liability initially as well as at the end of year 1? Very simple question. Only twist in the kahani is that ये INR में नहीं है, this is in USD. क्या फर्क पड़ता है? It's quite simple. Okay. So let us look at the presentation. Initial measurement will happen in USD. This is there. This is a study module question only. Okay. So 10,000, 10,000. This is in arrears. In arrears. So it will happen after 1 year. So discounting factor for 1 year, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So present value comes to 43,300. This I will convert to spot rate on the date of commencement. So my ROU asset and lease liability initially will be 29,44,400. 29,44,400. Have you understood this so far? Have you understood this part so far? यहां तक समझा अपने को? Got it. Soham has, okay, that was the earlier one. Okay, Srishti has confirmed, Aniket has confirmed, Kaushiki has confirmed. Good enough. Okay, so now will I remeasure this ROU asset? The question is, will I remeasure the ROU asset? Answer is no, you will not. Why? Because this is a non-monetary item. You will only amortize it. So 2944 divided by 5 years, 5,88,880. So end of year 1, ROU asset appears at 23,55,520. 2355 520. Okay, coming to the next part, lease liability. Coming to the next part, the lease liability. Initially kitna tha? Initially sir, it is 43,300 USD. Yes, so 43,300 plus interest at 5%. See, this is the initial value today on the date of commencement. End of 1 year uska interest aayega na, finance cost, at which rate? 5%. Sir, how 5%? Well, it's given in the question. Borrowing rate for a USD borrowing was 5%. So you will consider USD borrowing loan rates. Okay. So therefore, that comes to 2165, 43,300 into 5%. Okay. And then you make a payment of 10,000. So closing balance is 35,465. 35,465. So what is the entry you are going to pass? Interest expense account debit to lease liability. And this will be 2,165 into average rate. We use average rate for P&L items. It is a cost. It is for the entire year. So you take the average rate for P&L items. 1,49,385. This is INR. This is also INR. Both of them are rupees. Up till now, is it clear? Up till now, is it clear? Yes. अभी तक clear है lease liability? Yes. Srishti has confirmed. Others, lease liability up till now, is it clear? Yes. Okay. All right. So now, what is the balance in lease liability? 35,465. This I will have to convert using the closing rate. So you can have a look. Initial 43,300 at 29,44,400 plus interest 149,385 minus payment. You are making the payment on the last day. So 10,000 on that date, it was 70. So you are making a payment of 7 lakhs. So 35,465 against that, this is your balance just by doing add less. But it is a monetary liability and therefore you will have to state it at the your closing rate of 70. So your liability should actually be 24,82. It is coming 2393. This difference will ultimately be an exchange loss, which is taken to the profit and loss account, which is taken to the P&L. Have you understood this? Yes. Have you understood this? बस यही बोलता है वो paragraph. Okay. Have you understood this part? Yes. Okay, good. Aniket Jain, Veer Murali Satyanarayan has confirmed. Srishti Goyal has confirmed. Good. So most of them have confirmed, which is fair enough. So मेरे लिए उतना काफी है. This is also done. Okay. अच्छा. Now coming to accounting in the books of Lessor. Lessee का हो गया. बात का सर इतनी जल्दी हो गया. Then we just have to see modifications. That's it. Then we have two special cases. One is a sublease. The other is a sale and leaseback. And then we should be through with the standard. Okay. So accounting in the books of Lessor, very simple. It's exactly what you have studied in AS 19. It's exactly what you have studied in AS 19. Sir, what did we study? Well, the lessor should first check whether the lease is a finance lease or whether it is an operating lease. So what is an operating lease? Every lease other than a finance lease. What is a finance lease? A lease where substantially all risks and rewards associated with the ownership are transferred to the lessee. So the lessor will say, will evaluate these 5 conditions. And you remember these 5 conditions are what are there in AS 19. These 5 conditions are what are there in AS 17 also. What is that? One is ownership, automatic transfer of ownership at the end of the lease term. If this is the case, or there is a purchase option and it is highly likely that the lessee will exercise the option, or third one, the lease term is for major part of economic life, or present value of minimum lease payment substantially covers the fair value, usually 90%, or specialized nature of the asset. If any of these conditions are fulfilled, if any of these conditions are fulfilled, then at that point of time, what are you going to recognize? It will be recognized as a finance lease and the accounting would be done accordingly. So in a finance lease, what we are going to recognize is an outgoing of the asset, is an outgoing of the asset. Is it okay? Yes, is an outgoing of the asset because I am transferring the asset to somebody. Is it okay? Yes. So first we have to assess whether it is a finance lease or an operating lease. So what do you mean by operating lease accounting? We'll look at that. Initial recognition, nothing. Subsequent measurement, you will recognize depreciation because asset belongs to you in an operating lease. And you will pass the entry bank account debit to rental income and deferred rent account. Deferred rent account. What do you mean by deferred rent account? Let us take a simple example. Suppose you have 4 years and the rentals are 100, 200, 300, 400,000. What Ind AS or AS believes is that if your rentals are increasing, there must be something else which you are providing. Otherwise, you cannot increase the rentals. You will say, sir, मैं कुछ नहीं provide कर रही हूँ. I'm not providing anything. So therefore, what AS tells, in that case, the incomes will be recognized on a straight line basis. Okay. Rahul, can you please ask admin to turn on the chat option on YouTube? Website keeps logging me out during intervals and I have to keep on logging in. I understand, but I think it is a cautious decision on part of the BOS not to keep chats on YouTube because it may probably disrupt the other students in when they watch on YouTube or not. I don't know, not very sure, but I'll ask the admin. Okay, I'll ask the admin. Okay, I don't know how that is done. It's not in my hand. I can discuss it with them. Okay, it's just that YouTube is a very public platform. Okay, so we have trust on you guys who are the genuine students of this program, but you know there may be some mischievous elements who can come and unnecessarily chat or do something which is not probably what the institute would desire. Okay, so for that reason I think this is the platform which is kept open. Okay, otherwise any Tom, Dick and Harry can log in and just disrupt or disturb the sessions. Okay, all right. So coming to straight lining. So Ind AS believes that if you have given a property on lease, you should recognize the lease income in proportion to what you're offering. You cannot say 100 first year, 200 second year, 300 third year, 400 fourth year. What extra are you giving? Sir, nothing, same parcel of land, nothing changed, everything is the same. Then AS tells us in that case, you will have to straight line your rental income. So how am I going to do that? Well, for 4 years, 1,000 rupees. So lease rental income to be recognized each year is 250. So how are you going to pass the entry? Bank account debit, first year you get 100, rental income is 250. You will recognize a deferred rent account of 150. Second case, 200, but income is 250. You will recognize a deferred rent of 50. Third year, you will receive 300, but income will be 250. So you will reverse the deferred rent which you had recognized. And year 4, it will be 400, rental income 250. You would reverse the deferred rent of 150. And at the end of 4th year, deferred rent becomes 0. So this is exactly what is the meaning of deferred rent. It is just a temporary account to park so that your what you can, so that your straight lining can happen over the tenure of the lease term. That's it, nothing else. Okay. Coming to the finance lease, how am I going to recognize in the books of lessor the finance lease? Finance lease means asset is being transferred. So first thing is asset will be credited at the written down value. And you will recognize a lease receivable. You will recognize a lease receivable. Basically, lease receivable is the proceeds which you have sold. The difference will give rise either to a loss or to a gain. दोनों में से कुछ भी हो सकता है. Either a loss or a gain. Okay. Will you depreciate? No, because asset though you have already transferred. So you will not depreciate. Later on, what entry you will pass when you get the lease rentals? Bank account debit to finance income to lease receivable account. It is like repayment of financial liability. It is like repayment of financial liability. Okay. All right. Sir, in case of operating lease, lessor will depreciate the asset and lessee will, as usual, recognize the asset. Although the impact on P&L is the same, won't that be one asset and two recognitions? I'll give you one more example, Soham, where there is an inconsistency. Okay. I'll give you one more example. You have said that operating lease asset continues here. Absolutely right. Not only that, in the books of the lessee, there is an ROU asset which is coming. So I'm having asset also coming in two places. Asset will come in the lessor's books also. ROU asset also will come in the lessee's books also. Depreciation will come in both the books. So there is still a problem with Ind AS 116. There is still a problem with Ind AS 116. What happens in Ind AS 116 is that the lessor's account and the lessee's account, आमने सामने, they will never cross tally. They will never cross tally because of variety of accounting treatments which are permitted. Okay, because of variety of treatments which are permitted, and therefore this standard is still a work in progress project as far as streamlining is concerned. Most of the tidbits are ironed out, but there is still this major issue which is left, is that cross tallying between lessor and lessee is not achieved in Ind AS 116. Now, if cross tallying is not there in Ind AS 116, we come from a very traditional and conservative background, जिसमें मेरे बुक में asset है, उसके बुक में liability होना चाहिए. If I have a debtor of 100 rupees, the opposite party should have a creditor of 100 rupees. Ind AS makes you to remove that and tells us, ऐसा जरूरी क्यों है? Why is it even needed? What you are recognizing is a right of use asset and a lease liability. You are not recognizing the lessor's account in your books. It is not something that you have taken from the lessor, because this anomaly can also happen because you may use your borrowing rate, whereas the lessor will use his implicit rate of return, internal rate of return. Then also balances will not cross tally. So if this is the case, then what will happen is the lessor's account in lessee's books, lessee's account in lessor books will never tally. That means the lease receivable here and the lease liability there will never be equal and opposite. And Ind AS tells, chalta hai, it is fine. As long as your books give a true and fair view, it's absolutely fine. You don't have to break your head on this. Okay. So it is still a work in progress. That means cross tallying of accounts is not achieved. That is, in fact, one of the agendas that the International Accounting Standards Board sets every time in their meetings, that we have to streamline the accounting of certain standards, but there is still no consensus on the way this can be achieved. And therefore, the inconsistency continues to remain with the assets, with the cross balances, accept those inconsistencies, because what Ind AS 116 has achieved is something far more than these inconsistencies. It has achieved in getting comparability in line. It has achieved in ensuring that comparability is maintained. So it has gone miles ahead in terms of true and fair view. It has gone miles ahead in terms of achieving the true and fair view. But yes, in terms of these small gaps, there is an inconsistency. We'll see how the standard will be amended in the future. Okay, maybe Soham, I don't know, perhaps you would sit on the standards committee one day and come out with a solution. I never know. Okay, you never know that. Okay, so this is how the issue is at present. Okay, so now coming on to the next part, lease receivable account debit for for a finance lease to asset account. The difference will go in your profit or loss. And finally, you will have a bank account to finance income, and this lease receivable is earned and finally is received, and it becomes zero at the end. Okay. Now, what do you mean by lease receivable? What do you mean by lease receivable? This will be recognized at net investment in the lease. What do you mean by net investment in the lease? Well, simple si baat hai. Net investment means there must be something gross. Okay, so what is the gross investment in the lease? It is lease payments plus unguaranteed residual value. Lease payments plus unguaranteed residual value. What is lease payments? Simple definition, lease rentals plus guaranteed residual value. What do you mean guaranteed residual value? Due to manhandling of the asset, the lessee will guarantee a particular residual value to the lessor. If that is the case, we call it a guaranteed residual value. But asset is with the lessor, na? Asset ka ownership to lessor ke paas hai, right? So therefore, if the asset reverts back to the lessor after the lease agreement, then he has the asset. So he can further expect something more in the market. So therefore, you will also have an unguaranteed residual value. This together is known as nothing but residual value. Guaranteed plus unguaranteed becomes total residual value. So suppose you expect 50,000 from an asset, 40,000 is guaranteed from the lessee, for example, then 10,000 is your unguaranteed residual value, but it is not shown as lease rent plus residual value because this element is a part of my lease payments. This is my lease payments. It is related to lessee-lessor relationship. So they are together. So UGRV will be considered separately. UGRV considered separately. This is the gross investment in the lease. Sir, ye to ho gaya gross. But you are saying the lease receivable is at net. So gross or net ke beech mein kya hai? This is nothing but finance income. This is nothing but finance income. You can see unearned finance income is gross investment minus net investment in the lease. So gross se net mein aane ke liye, what are you going to do? These are total payments. You discount it to present value. Very simple. Present value of lease rentals, present value of residual value, present value of unguaranteed residual value. So gross is total, net is present value. Difference kya hoga? Difference will obviously be the unearned finance income. Unearned finance income. So this finance income will be received over the life of the finance lease, whereas this present value ho gaya. All right, everything is done, so nothing is left. So gross investment we discussed, net investment we discussed. Lease receivable is recognized at net investment in the lease, and then you amortize the lease receivable in the sense that the finance income will be recognized periodically, and that's it. The lease receivable should close at the end of the period, at the end of the tenure. Okay, so that takes care of this. Straight lining of lease rent we discussed already to ensure it's more representative. Okay, now the important part comes, manufacturer or dealer lessor, which I had told I will be discussing today. Okay, so now let us come to कैसे बताएंगे आपको. Okay, ठीक है, let us understand one thing. Okay, let us understand lease arrangements. See, typical lease arrangements could be between two parties. Okay, two types of lessors. One is a finance lessor. Sorry, not finance lessor. One is a pure lessor. Who is a pure lessor? उसका धंधा ही लीजिंग फाइनेंसिंग है, उसका काम ही लीजिंग फाइनेंसिंग है. समथिंग लाइक मुथूट फाइनेंस, ऑल दीज पीपल दे आर इनटू asset leasing and financing only. So whatever accounting we have seen till now is purely from the perspective of a pure lessor. Pure lessor के केस में क्या होगा? You will get the asset, transfer to lessee, collect finance income. Collect finance income. बस इतना सा ही रहता है और कुछ भी नहीं रहता. There is nothing else. Absolutely. So accounting for a pure lessor is very simple, very, very easy. Okay. The problem arises with a manufacturer or dealer lessor. Consider a company like Mahindra or Volkswagen, for example. Mahindra or Volkswagen, they manufacture cars, trucks, not trucks, sorry, cars, heavy vehicles, etc. Yes. Now, they also provide financing services. They also provide financing services. That means, if you look at a manufacturer or dealer lessor, I am having two streams of income. One is sale of goods, उसपे profit आएगा. One is finance income from leasing activities. That means on one transaction only, I will apply principles of Ind AS 115 in respect of sale of goods, and I will apply principles of Ind AS 116 in respect of leasing. So both the things will be applied, and therefore, it becomes a challenge ki how do I identify the transaction? How do I identify the transaction? How do I record the transaction correctly? Okay. Before that, I would also like to discuss something regarding that incremental rate of borrowing which we had discussed. Okay. Because I told you that the discount rate to be used is internal rate of return. If of the lessor, if that is not available, you will be using the incremental rate of borrowing. So this and manufacturer dealer lessor are related to one another. So let us understand the flow of the transaction first. Let us understand the flow first, and then you will be able to understand the manufacturer dealer well. Okay. So pure lessor, these are financial institutions, not banks. Banks engage in giving loans. They are not engaged in leasing financing activities. Some banks may, but normally they are in the business of giving the loans. In the case of a financial institution, the transaction happens like this. The financial institution, take Muthoot for example. Muthoot will go to the manufacturer, the showroom that buys or sells vehicles, and then it buys a vehicle from there. And gets the invoice in its name. So Muthoot is not manufacturing anything. Muthoot is just procuring the asset and gives it to the lessee. In exchange of lease payments. The lessee, the asset will revert to the lessee after the tenure is complete. So it is typically like a hire purchase kind of an arrangement. Lease, hire purchase, they are all interchangeably used. तो इसको हम लोग बोलते हैं hire purchase. Now the lessee will definitely ask Muthoot, मेरे को invoice बताओ. Show me the invoice at what price you have purchased, because I have to pay the lease payments to you accordingly. I need to check the workings, and therefore मेरे को invoice बताओ. And the financial institution will definitely show the invoice to the lessee. So now the lessee knows one thing: present value of cash outflow. He knows the cash outflow which has happened today, present value of cash outflow for the Muthoot financing company. He knows the present value of cash outflow. The lessee will also know the inflows that will happen to the Muthoot financing company. Kaise malum? Are baba, the lessee will pay the lease rent, no? The lessee will pay installment, the lessee will pay the down payment. So the lessee exactly knows what is the payment that will flow. So he will also know the cash inflows. He will also know the cash inflows to whom? To the financial institution. So he will know the outflow, he will know the inflow. What is IRR? It is a rate which equates the present value of cash inflows to the present value of cash outflows. Does the lessee have all the data to equate both of them? Yes sir. क्या क्या चाहिए? Tenure चाहिए, उसके पास है. Installments चाहिए, he has it. He needs the down payment, he has it. He wants the present value of cash outflow, he has that. So everything is there. Only thing which is missing is the rate of return. All that he needs to do is he needs to sit, work it out in an Excel file, and that's it. To put a goal seek, and then he will get a present value of cash outflow, present value of cash inflow. Equating it, he's going to get the internal rate of return. So here the lessee is in a position to know what is the internal rate of return of Muthoot Finance. He is in a position to know that. And that is why Ind AS 116, when it tells discount rate, it is very categorical when it says that the first discount rate preference is internal rate of return. The first is internal rate of return. Dhoond sakte ho to please dhoondo and use that only. But coming to a manufacturer dealer lessor like Volkswagen or Mahindra के केस में और Volkswagen के केस में, they are not only selling and giving they are not only financing the car for you, they are also manufacturing the car for you. And because they are manufacturing the car for you, there are two streams of incomes for these companies. One is the profit on sale. The other one is the finance income. In this case, it is impossible to determine IRR of lessor. ढूंढ नहीं सकते हो आपके पास. Do you think Volkswagen will tell you, beta, this is the cost of my vehicle, now you please find out the IRR? Do you think the company will do this? It will never do that. It will never do that. Therefore, incremental rate of borrowing. Therefore, incremental rate of borrowing. So this is the logic behind the discount rates. And now we are talking about accounting in the books of the manufacturer or dealer lessor. Manufacturing in the books of dealer lessor. Okay. So now let us understand. Pure lessor, we have just now seen the accounting. Lease receivable account debit to asset account debit to gain which goes to profit or loss account. Simple example. Okay, nothing difficult. It's very simple, because in pure lessor only you have to consider Ind AS 116. You have to only consider Ind AS 116. Coming to dealer lessor, we now have two streams of incomes. One is profit on sale. The other is finance income. So how do I recognize? I have to recognize sale of inventory. I will split up this profit element. Between cost of goods sold and sales. I will split up this profit element between cost of goods sold and sales. How do I split it up? Well, I will take the lease rent minus the unguaranteed residual value. And this also will be, cost minus unguaranteed residual value. That's it. The only change which will happen is this gain ke badle, I will have sales on one side, COGS on one side. In the sales figure, I will deduct the unguaranteed residual value. And in the COGS figure, from the cost, I will deduct the unguaranteed residual value. I will deduct the unguaranteed residual value. Question is, sir, why are you deducting unguaranteed residual value? Please pay attention. It's extremely important for us to understand. In the case of a lease, finance lease, where asset is being transferred, you are in effect selling your asset. When you are selling your asset, sale price क्या है उसका? Sale price is present value of lease rentals. Sale price is present value of lease rentals. Sir, what about unguaranteed residual value? Arey baba, when you are making a sale, you can recognize a sale only in respect of those amounts which are agreed upon. What is unguaranteed residual value? This is just an estimate. This is just an estimate. I'm not sure what will be the unguaranteed residual value. Look at the words unguaranteed. इसका कोई guarantee नहीं है. कम हो सकता है, ज़्यादा हो सकता है, कुछ भी हो सकता है. But look at the present value of lease payments. What is my present value of lease payments? Is this an estimate? No. This is contractual. This is contractual. So if this is contractual, can I take it to be my selling price? Definitely you can. And that is why unguaranteed residual value, being a mere estimate, cannot form part of my revenues in terms of Ind AS 115. अरे conservatism गया है does not mean आप कुछ भी figure account करो. You cannot recognize an estimate in your selling price and make the accounting. Okay, it is your estimate. आप कितना भी optimistic रहो, you cannot recognize this in terms of your revenue. And that is why from the sales calculations, from the lease payments, I will be deducting the unguaranteed residual value. From the lease receivable, I will deduct the unguaranteed residual value. मैंने एक जगह पे effect दे दिया. I will obviously have to give the effect on the debit side also. That is cost minus unguaranteed residual value. And this is how the accounting will happen in the case of a finance, in the case of a manufacturer, dealer, lessor, who is a finance, in the case of a finance lease, in the case of a finance lease. Is it okay? Have you understood this part? Yes. Have you understood this part? What is the relevance of residual value for manufacturer lessor, as after all the asset is being sold? The importance of unguaranteed residual value is in the lease receivable, because ultimately finance income is being recognized. Ultimately the finance income is being recognized. Okay. So it all depends on the amalgamation of two standards together, that is 116 and 115. Okay, so Kaushiki, Srishti confirmed, Rahul, Aniket Jain, Satyanarayan, yes, Soham, Sumit, Saksham. Is it clear so far? Yes, we have a question on this which I will be taking right now. So UGRV, lessee has to pay the entire amount, Kaushiki. Lessee has to pay whatever he has guaranteed as per the agreement. UGRV will be relevant if you receive something more. If you receive something more than what the lessee has guaranteed. If you receive something more than what the lessee has guaranteed. Okay, Shailendra also has confirmed. All right. So we move on to one of the questions, and I hope that this should make the things clear. Okay. All right. A dealer lessor enters into a 10-year lease of equipment with the lessee. Equipment is not specialized, expected to have alternative use to the lessor at the end of the 10-year lease term. Means the asset will come back to him. Means the asset will have a value later on. Okay. So let us look at the terms. Lessor receives annual lease payments of 15,000 payable at the end of each year. Lessor expects the residual value to be 50,000 at the end of the 10-year lease term. 50,000 का residual value है. Residual value means guaranteed residual value plus unguaranteed residual value. Okay. The lessee provides a residual value guarantee that protects the lessor from the first 30,000 of loss for a sale at a price below the estimated residual value at the end of the lease term. That is 50,000. So 30,000 is guaranteed residual value, 20,000 is unguaranteed residual value. The equipment has an estimated remaining economic life of 15 years, a carrying amount of 1 lakh and a fair value of 1 lakh 11. Life is 15, lease tenure is 10, means after 10 years, the asset is reverting back to the dealer lessor. Okay. The lease does not transfer ownership of the underlying asset to the lessee at the end of the lease term. Neither does it contain an option to purchase the underlying asset. Means this is putting to rest all the claims that ye asset 10 saal ke baad it will come back to the lessor. The interest rate implicit in the lease is 10.078%. How would the lessor account for it in its books of accounts? Okay. So I will just quickly rush you through the process. We had done it in the last batch. I'm just taking the same thing so that we save on time. See, first thing is, I do not know whether it is a finance lease or an operating lease. So my first job is to ask the question, is it a finance lease or not? And we have to meet any one of those 5 conditions. Is it specialized? It is saying it is not specialized. Is it leased for substantial period? No. 10 out of 15 means 67%. But substantial period means more than 75%. So that condition also is not fulfilled. So we will look at whether present value of minimum lease payments is substantially equal to the fair value or not. So present value of lease payments. Lease payments are 2. That is, one is the lease rentals. The other is the guaranteed residual value. So present, so this comes to 1,03,344. Present value of minimum lease payments is 1,03,000. Fair value is 1,11,000. So it is 93% of the fair value. And therefore, we conclude that it is a finance lease. And now, how am I going to do the accounting? Accounting will be very simple. Lease receivable will be at fair value of 1,11,000. To revenue, I will recognize as 1,03,344. To inventory, the asset is going out. So therefore, 1 lakh. Revenue will be 1,11,000 fair value minus this 7,656. What is 7,656? Well, 7,656 is nothing but present value of the unguaranteed residual value. This is 20,000 into 0.3828. This 7,656. What is 20,000? Unguaranteed residual value, and 0.3828 is the discounting factor. So this comes to 7,656. So I will recognize a revenue of 1,03,344 as well as a COGS of 92,344. That is cost 1 lakh minus 7,656 minus 7,656. So that has given rise to a gain of 11,000. That would give rise to a gain of 11,000. This gap has given rise to a gain of 11,000. There is a gain that's already recognized. This gain is in accordance with Ind AS 115. This is in accordance with Ind AS 115. Have you understood this accounting? Yes. Have you understood this? Any doubt so far? Did you understand? It's a little fast, but I think it's manageable. If you have not understood something, please let me know. Okay. So Srishti has confirmed. Okay. All right. Okay. See, you can take it as fair value. I use the term fair value, but actually what is lease receivable? I should have used the term lease receivable. What did we study in the standard? Lease receivable should be recognized at net investment in the lease. Net investment in the lease. What is the net investment in the lease? Present value of lease payments plus present value of unguaranteed residual value. So that comes to present value of lease payments is 1,03,344 plus 7656. किधर गया ये 7656. Okay. So that comes to 1,11,000. That's it. It is equal to fair value. So therefore ऐसा लगता है कि it is a fair value, but it's not. It's actually this 1,03,344 plus 7,656. So that is, we are in line with the standard. Okay. All right. So that takes care of manufacturer, dealer, lessor. Very important concept. We have covered this. Anybody has any doubts in this? Anybody has any doubts in this? Sir, in case of manufacturer, I also think that unguaranteed residual value is not there. See, where that is what I'm doing, no? मैंने eliminate कर दिया. I have eliminated the unguaranteed residual value. Are you seeing in my revenue, I have eliminated unguaranteed residual value. So that is not what I have considered. But for the for purposes of 115, but for the purpose of 116, I have to recognize the unguaranteed residual value because here the asset is reverting back to me. Here the asset is reverting back to me, and because asset reverts back to me, मेरे पास कुछ तो रहेगा, some value will be there which I can realize because I have the physical asset with me. मेरे पास custody है asset का, and therefore even in case of manufacturer, dealer, lessor, where asset reverts back to them at the end of the lease tenure, that point of time also it will be regarded as an unguaranteed residual value, being an important concept from the perspective of 116, not from the perspective of 115. Okay, so that takes care of this part. Let us move on to the next. Okay, I'll be leaving this with homework. This is the latest RTP question. Should be able to do it. Okay, you should be able to do. Then you will be able to understand even better. Okay. All right. We then move on to special cases. Okay. I'll first pick up the more complicated one. Sublease is little simple. I'll first move on to the more complicated ones, and then we'll come back to the simple transactions. Okay. First is, you guys need a break, 5 minutes break, because I have 1 hour left and I have to complete sale and leaseback, modifications, and sublease. These are 3 small topics which are left, and then we should be done with the standard. So do you need a break or should I continue and wind it up? Come on, guys, respond. Kaushiki, did you understand the UGRV thing? Yes, unguaranteed residual value. So, I leave you at 950, 950 without a break or with a break? How are you guys placed? Because the other parts are very clear. I have to continue, finish, and at the same time, these are important parts also. So, agar chahiye, break. Aniket is saying continue. Kaushiki is saying break. What about the others? Break. Shailendra is saying break. Come on, guys, respond. मेजॉरिटी के हिसाब से. अच्छा, एवरीबडी वांट्स टू कंटिन्यू. नो आंसर्स फ्लोइंग. ओके, विल कंटिन्यू. ओके, continue. Okay, all right, let's continue. So now we start with something known as sale and a leaseback. So what is a sale and leaseback? Well, essentially it is a transaction which involves transfer of asset by one entity to another and leasing back the same asset by the original entity. So normally this is a way of monetizing your asset. Immediate cash requirements are there, then you have a sale and leaseback. So basically sale and leaseback falls under two broad divisions. First one is control is not transferred. मतलब asset का करता धरता सब कुछ आप ही हो, सिर्फ नाम के वास्ते आपने asset transfer किया, but otherwise there is absolutely no change in the control. Everything is solely in your control. Then in substance it is a loan transaction. In substance it is a loan. So entry will be treated also like a loan. It will not be a sale. It will not be a sale transaction. Okay. In the case a control is transferred. Control is transferred means the conditions specified in Ind AS 115. Conditions specified in the revenue standard. Either conditions have in Ind AS 115 are fulfilled. If you fulfill those conditions, then you will have to record it as a sale transaction. You will have to record it as a sale transaction. And what are you going to do? You will de-recognize the underlying asset and record a gain or loss on a proportionate basis. Record gain or loss on a proportionate basis. Sir, क्या होता है proportionate basis? हमको बताओ. So let us come to a question. Okay. We will understand this sale and leaseback with the help of this question. You will then be in a position to appreciate better. Okay. An entity, seller lessee, sells a building to another entity, that is a buyer lessor, for cash of 30 lakhs. That means what? My selling price is 30 lakh rupees. Okay, all right. Don't look at other parts of the solution, please. Immediately before the transaction, the building is carried at a cost of 15 lakhs. Okay, good enough. At the same time, the seller lessee enters into a contract with buyer lessor for the right to use the building for 20 years with annual payments of 2 lakhs payable at the end of each year. मतलब अभी बेचा 30 लाख मिल गए, immediately मैंने लीज पे ले लिया and the lease rentals is 2 lakhs at the end of each year. The terms and conditions of the transactions are such that the transfer of the building satisfies the requirements for determining when a performance obligation is satisfied in Ind AS 115. That means what? A sale transaction nahi hai. You are selling an asset. It is not saying make asset your inventory. It is saying that the condition for control which is defined in 115 is met here, and therefore you can take it that the sale of the building has happened. The fair value of the building at the date of sale is 27 lakhs. Initial direct cost ignored. Interest rate implicit is 12%. Buyer lessor classifies the lease as the building as an operating lease. How should the transaction be accounted by the seller lessee as well as the buyer lessor? Okay. So look now. Fair value of the building is 27 lakhs. You have sold it for 30 lakhs. क्यों? तुम्हारा रिश्तेदार है वो, that he will give you 30 lakhs. Is he related to you? Have you done some undue benefit to him? उसके सर पे बंदूक रख के उससे पैसा लिया क्या? नहीं, उसने 30 lakhs दिया. When the value is 27 lakhs, that means there is something hidden in this. That something hidden is what is the hidden financing component. Why do we call it as a hidden financing component? We call it as a hidden financing component because the buyer is paying you more than the fair value of the building. That means what? You have told the buyer, देख मेरे को कैसे भी करके 30 lakhs चाहिए. I need 30 lakhs. For this 30 lakhs, I am selling you this building. But he will say the building is worth 27 lakhs. No, हाँ. So you pay me 30, The extra 3 lakhs I am taking to you as a financing component, which I will repay to you in the future, to you in the future. And then he says, "ठीक है, no problem." So this 3 lakhs will be taken as a hidden financing component. Repayment कैसे होगा? I'm also taking the asset on lease from you, no? So if you are taking the asset on lease from, if I'm taking the asset on lease from you, you charge me more than the market rent and I'll pay that to you. For example, market rent is 1,80,000. You charge me 2 lakhs per month. I'll pay you 2 lakhs per month. Ho gaya. So that means I would have paid the financing component charges also. So therefore, if you read the question, 2 lakhs payable at the end of each year for 20 years. So what will be the present value of total lease payments? 2 lakhs into 7.5894. This is nothing but present value annuity factor of 12% for 20 years. Matlab every year you will pay 2 lakh rupees. The present value of that is 14,93,000 something. Okay. Now, out of 14,93,000, I have paid something extra. What is that extra? This 3 lakhs. I would have repaid the loan at the end of the lease term. So 14 minus 3. So present value of dedicated lease payments is 11,93,888. Up till now, is it clear? Up till now, is it clear? Yes. Till now, are you able to understand why we have taken it as a hidden financing component? Are you able to understand why we have taken something known as dedicated lease payments? Up till now, is it clear? Yes. Is it clear until now? Kaushiki has confirmed. Soham, Srishti, yahan tak samajh mein aa gaya sabko? Yes. Is it clear till now? Okay. Now, let us assume, think it off like this. Asset A, I have sold. Pay attention. Fair value 27 lakhs. WDV 15 lakh. So what would be 12 lakhs? This would be gain. Asset B taken on lease. So this is 11,93,889. If it was the story of two different assets, मैंने एक asset बेच दिया and I took something else on lease, then how the transaction would look like? I would recognize a gain of 12 lakhs and I would recognize an asset at 11,93,889. Let me move one step further and say, if this is 30 lakhs as the fair value or the transaction value, I would recognize a gain of 15 lakhs and I would recognize the asset as 14,93,889. Yes, this would be the story if what I sold and what I took on lease are two totally different items. What I sold and what I took on lease are two totally different items. But yahan pe that is not happening. What I have sold is exactly equal to what I have taken on lease. What I have sold is exactly equal to what I have taken on lease. That means what? Now please pay attention to my words carefully. ध्यान से अच्छे से समझना. I have sold an asset and I got back the same asset. So now tell me, did I transfer all the rights in this asset or have I retained some rights in that asset? Did I transfer all the rights or have I retained some rights in that asset? Did I transfer all the rights or did I retain some of the rights in that asset? Bolo. Come on. I have retained some rights. Basically, which rights have I retained? I have retained the right of use. Right. Matlab, I will use this asset the way I want. I will use this asset, monetize it, make money out of it by utilizing it the way I want. Yes. So the right of use of this asset is still retained by me. But which right is given up? For instance, ownership right is given up. That means what? Tomorrow, the lessor can sell the asset and the sale proceeds will go to him. It will not come to you because he's the owner. You are not the owner. So ownership rights are transferred. Usage rights are retained with you. Usage rights are retained with you. So therefore, please pay attention. Please pay attention. The book value of the asset is 15 lakhs. The fair value is 27 lakhs if the entire sale had to be recognized. If the entire sale had to be recognized. Agar pura ka pura sale hota, if this asset had to be sold in its entirety, 27 lakhs would be the sale proceeds, 15 lakhs would be the book value. Sale aata, asset chala jata. But that is not what is happening. You are getting the rights in terms of fair value of 11,93,889. Itne ka asset in terms of fair value is maintained with you, is still kept with you, and therefore the proportionate rights which you will retain with you is the cross multiplication, that is 15 lakhs into 11 lakh 93 divided by 27. So this is the ROU asset which you are going to retain in your own books. This is the ROU asset which you are going to retain in your own books. Okay, I will explain one more time. I will explain one more time. Please pay attention. If I had to sell this asset, I would have received 27 lakhs and I would have recorded a profit of 12 lakhs and an asset going out of 15 lakhs. I would recognize this. But now what is happening? Now what is happening is I sold this asset. The same asset I took back, and the dedicated lease payments fair value, present value is 11,93,889. That means what? What have I got in return is assets with a fair value of 11,93,889 in terms of usage rights, in terms of usage rights at fair value. That means in terms of book value, in terms of book value, what will be the value of those rights? You do a cross multiplication. The book value of the ROU asset will be 6,63,272. Have you understood till now? Have you understood till now? Have you understood till now? Yes. I have not gone to this part. I am still here only. Okay. उसके नीचे का अभी तक मैंने बात नहीं किया है. We will discuss that also. Up till now, is it clear? Yes, it is clear. So 11,93,000 odd is the fair value of the ROU asset, the fair value of the right of use asset. But आपका value कितना है? You have gotten the same asset with you. You cannot book it at 11,93,000. Why you cannot book it at 11,93,000? Because the book value of this asset is 15 lakhs. How can you take it at fair value? You cannot do a fair valuation of your ROU asset. You will have to book it at the proportionate book value only. And that is why the ROU asset is going to be 6,63,271. Absolutely right. So Kaushiki, you had initially said 11.93, but no, you have now correctly said 6.63, which is going to be the value of the ROU asset that you have retained. ROU asset that you have retained. Excellent. Let us now move on to the next part. Sir, out of 30 lakhs, I got 15. Matlab my gain is 15. Wait, out of 30, actual fair value is 27. That means 3 lakhs is financing component. So your actual gain on sale is only 12 lakhs. Your actual gain on sale is 12 lakhs. Now, out of this 12 lakhs, what is the proportion of rights which you have retained? What is the proportion of rights which you have transferred? So proportion of rights retained, this is 12 lakhs into 11 lakh 93 is what you got versus a fair value of 27 lakhs on sale. So 5 lakh 30,617 is nothing but the fair value of the is nothing but the profit element relating to the rights retained. This is nothing but profit element relating to the rights that are retained. Have you understood this? Yes. Have you understood this? This is nothing but profit element relating to the rights that you have retained. And you would have transferred something which has resulted in a profit. You have transferred the profit. You have transferred ownership rights. So relating to ownership rights, what will be the value? 12 lakh minus 5 lakh 30, 6 lakh 69,382. This is the proportion of rights which you have transferred. So the gain on that is 6 lakh 69,382. This is in relation to rights transferred. That is why this profit element we are going to recognize in our final entry. This is 6 lakh 69, which we are going to recognize in our final entry. So how will my final entry look like? Please pay careful. Bank account debit 30 lakh rupees. यार मेरे बैंक में पैसे आ गए 30 lakhs. Out of 30 lakhs, building गया 15 lakh का. Yes. Out of this, 3 lakhs is my financing component. So that will be a financial liability, 3 lakh rupees. The asset which you are going to retain is how much? The asset you are going to retain is 6,63,271. This figure. The liability you are going to recognize towards lease payments is 11,93,888. And finally, the profit on account of transfer of rights is 6,69,382.79. That's it. That is how the sale and leaseback is going to be recognized. That is how the sale and leaseback is going to be recognized. Is it clear? Yes. Have you understood this part? Have you understood till now? Bolo. Soham, Shailendra, Aniket, Srishti, Kaushiki. Have you understood? Yes, Srishti has confirmed. Kaushiki, have you understood this part? I'll give this working to you. ये working आपके लिए ही बनाया है मैंने. Okay, so don't worry whether this working will come or not. It will come to you by this weekend, by Friday, Saturday, it should come to you. Okay, so you should not have any problem. Okay, but have you understood so far? No answers? Kaushiki, Soham. Yes. You need any more clarity on the profit distribution? How did I get the profit? Please explain the journal entry once again. Okay. I think the problem is arising mainly on account of this profit split. Otherwise, you should be fairly comfortable. Are you clear with these entries? See, I'm asking the first question relating to the following entries. Are you clear with 30 lakhs? Are you clear with 15 lakhs? Are you clear with 3 lakhs? Are you clear with 11 lakh 93? Are you clear with 6 lakh 63? All these together, are you clear, or is there a problem with any one amount? If there is a problem with any one amount, please specify that amount and I will explain once again. Please specify that amount and I will explain once again. $30 lakhs, you got the money, so bank account debit. आप asset बेच रहे हो, you are selling the entry, that control definition is met, so you have to recognize outgo of building, so building will be credited with 15 lakhs. You have taken 3 lakhs extra, so that is a financial liability you will be repaying in the form of increased market rent, so credit the financial liability. You have now received a lease liability, so that lease liability has to be recognized at present value of lease payments, so 11 lakh 93 is your lease liability. Up till these four parts at least you should be clear. 30 lakhs, 15 lakhs, 3 lakhs, 1193. These four should be clear. The question is this 6 lakh 63 and 6 lakh 69. Zara dhyan se dena, fir se. Okay. Now see, I have sold an asset worth 15 lakhs for 27 lakhs. Okay. The same asset, I got it back. The same asset, I got it back. And because I got back the same asset, it means some of the rights of that very asset have come back to me. It means some of the rights relating to that asset have come back to me. अगर मैं asset रखता अपने पास, if I had to keep the asset with myself, I would have a very clear and crystal title. I would have very clear and crystal rights relating to that asset. But now the ownership right is transferred to somebody. I only have usage rights. So therefore, in respect of the ROU asset, can you recognize entire 11 lakh 93 as the ROU asset? Answer is no, you cannot. Why? Because 1193 corresponds to the fair value, whereas you have to book the ROU asset in terms of the book value. Sir, why book value? Because my friend, this is your asset only. ये आपका ही asset है. When it was sold, it belonged to you. So when it comes back also, it belongs to you. So the same asset which is sold is returning back. How can I increase the price of that asset? I cannot increase the price of that asset, and therefore I have to recognize it at a proportionate reduction. So 11.93 into 15 divided by 27, 6,63,000 is the book value of ROU asset to be retained. Now coming back to the gain on sale of 12 lakh rupees, 27 fair value minus 15 lakhs. So gain on sale of 12 lakh rupees, the proportion of rights retained and rights transferred. Out of 12 lakhs is the profit on entire 27 lakhs. But I am retaining the rights of only 1193. So 5 lakh 30 ka profit I am going to retain. The balance is in respect of rights which are transferred. So 6 lakh 69 is the profit in respect of rights which are transferred, which will have to be recognized as a gain on transfer of rights, Is the journal entry clear now? Or is there any difficulty still? बोलो. अरे सब हो किधर? Where is everyone? Have you understood? Aniket Jain, is your doubt cleared? Kaushiki, did you understand now? Srishti has already confirmed. Soham, Shailendra, Saksham, have you understood? Have you understood? अरे यार रेस्पॉन्स तो डालो, आपके रेस्पॉन्सेस नहीं मिल रहे हैं. Clear. Aniket Jain has confirmed. Soham, did you follow? Soham, Kaushiki, Soham. Shailendra has also confirmed. Yes. अभी there is one more part left in this question. अच्छे से समझ नहीं आ रहा. अच्छा, तो एक लास्ट बार कोशिश करेंगे. Yes, this time I'll do it in Hindi. Hopefully समझ में आना चाहिए. ठीक है, देखिए. ओके, देखिए, हाउ डू आई डू दिस. ओके, तो मेरा एसेट मेरे बुक्स में 15 lakhs का था. आई हैव सोल्ड इट टू समबडी फॉर 30 lakhs. मैंने ये 30 लाख में बेच दिया, जबकि इस एसेट का फेयर वैल्यू 27 lakhs था. तो मैंने एक्स्ट्रा में क्यों बेचा? यार मुझे पैसे की जरूरत है. दैट मीन्स यू गॉट समथिंग मोर फॉर अ फाइनेंसिंग अरेंजमेंट. तो ये 3 लाख हो गया आपके लिए लोन. तो ये हो गया मेरा लोन. ठीक है, नाउ मैं वही एसेट वापस ले रहा हूं. ओके, अभी ये सब छोड़ दो, भूल जाओ इसको. नाउ इसको हम अकाउंट कैसे करेंगे? सपोज करो यू हैड एसेट ए, एसेट बी. आपके पास ये दो एसेट थे. आपने एसेट ए बेच दिया, तो आप एंट्री पास करते थे बैंक अकाउंट डेबिट 27 टू एसेट 15 टू प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस. ये हो गया गेन आपका 12. दिस वाज व्हाट यू यूज्ड टू डू द अकाउंटिंग. एंड देन you would additionally take an asset on lease. क्या था आपका लीज का टर्म्स? सर 2 लाख का लीज रेंटल्स 20 साल के लिए, डिस्काउंटिंग रेट इज 12%. तो मुझे लगते 14,93,889, बट उसमें से 3 लाख मेरा फाइनेंसिंग के लिए जा रहा. आई एम पेइंग मोर देन द मार्केट रेंट. सो 11,93 मेरे लिए बन गया ROU एसेट. तो मैं ये एंट्री पास करता था, ROU एसेट अकाउंट डेबिट टू लीज लायबिलिटी. कितना होता था ये होता था मेरा 11,93,889. 11,93,889. दिस वुड बी द केस अगर मैं एसेट ए बेचता एंड एसेट बी लेता. अगर मेरे पास एक एसेट चला जाता था और एक एसेट आता था, दिस वुड बी द एक्चुअल पिक्चर. ये होता था मेरा एक्चुअल पिक्चर. नाउ लेट अस लुक कि भाई इस केस में क्या हो रहा है. सर इस केस में आपका यही एसेट जा रहा है और वापस में यही एसेट घूम के आ रहा है. दिस एसेट ओनली इज कमिंग. दिस एसेट ओनली इज कमिंग. अच्छा, तो सर यही एसेट घूम फिर के आपके पास आ रहा है. नाउ जस्ट थिंक, अभी जरा सोचो, 15 लाख का एसेट आपने बेच दिया. 15 लाख का एसेट आपने बेच दिया 27 लाख में. मुझे इतना बताओ, अगर यही एसेट आपके पास वापस आएगा, इफ दिस एसेट ओनली हैज टू कम, आप उसको किस अमाउंट पे रिकॉर्ड करोगे? आप उसको प्रॉफिट के साथ रिकॉर्ड करोगे या आप उसको कॉस्ट पे रिकॉर्ड करोगे? घूम फिर के यही एसेट आ रहा है आपके पास. याद रखो, इट इज एसेट ए ओनली विच इज गोइंग आउट एंड कमिंग इन. मुझे सिर्फ इतना बताओ, फ्रॉम अ ट्रू एंड फेयर व्यू परस्पेक्टिव, ये जो एसेट वापस आ रहा है, मुझे उसको रिकॉर्ड करना है प्रॉफिट के साथ या मुझे उसको रिकॉर्ड करना है एट कॉस्ट? Should I record it at profit, at including a profit markup, और शुड आई रिकॉर्ड इट ओनली एट कॉस्ट? मुझे बताओ। एक्सक्लूडिंग द प्रॉफिट। कौशिकी आपको समझा व्हाट डू आई मीन बाय प्रॉफिट मार्कअप? देखो मेरा एसेट वर्थ 15, सेलिंग फॉर 27, 12, लेकिन सेम एसेट इज कमिंग बैक इन इफेक्ट। सपोज कीजिए ये आपका ऑफिस है, सपोज कीजिए ये आपका ऑफिस बिल्डिंग है, आपने ये ऑफिस बिल्डिंग बेचा और बाद में वही ऑफिस बिल्डिंग लीज पे ले लिया। मतलब आप जरा सा भी उस ऑफिस से हिले नहीं, आपका ऑफिस वहीं पर है। ये सिर्फ एक पेपर ट्रांजैक्शन है, दिस इज ओनली अ पेपर ट्रांजैक्शन। दैट मीन्स व्हाट? ये एसेट ट्रू एंड फेयर व्यू रिप्रेजेंट करने के लिए इट मस्ट अपीयर एट कॉस्ट प्राइस। ये आपका कॉस्ट पे दिखना चाहिए। अच्छा सर कॉस्ट पे दिखना चाहिए तो 15 पे दिखा देंगे। 15 पे आप कैसे दिखाओगे? 15 पे आप दिखाते तो आपके पास ओनरशिप राइट्स होते, आपके पास ओनरशिप राइट्स होते। आपने अभी ओनरशिप राइट्स ट्रांसफर कर दिया, आपके पास जो है सिर्फ यूसेज राइट्स है। यू आर हैविंग ओनली ROU asset, you don't have the ownership rights. That means what? सर हम 15 पे तो इसका अकाउंटिंग नहीं कर पाएंगे, हम 15 पे तो इसका अकाउंटिंग नहीं कर पाएंगे। 15 के नीचे है, ठीक है, 15 के नीचे ही होगा। ओके दैट मीन्स व्हाट? मुझे बेसिकली ये 12 लाख का जो प्रॉफिट है, वो 12 लाख का जो प्रपोर्शनेट प्रॉफिट है, मुझे यहां से हटाना पड़ेगा उसको। आई विल हैव टू रिमूव इट फ्रॉम दी ROU एसेट एज वेल एज द फ्रॉम दी ROU एसेट। मुझे ये प्रॉफिट हटाना पड़ेगा। आई कैन शो, आप ऐसा समझ लीजिए ये है मेरा एसेट। ओके इसमें दो राइट्स है, यूसेज और ओनरशिप। ओनरशिप मैंने यूसेज वाला राइट अपने पास रखा, मैंने ओनरशिप वाला राइट ट्रांसफर किया। तो जब मैंने ओनरशिप वाला राइट ट्रांसफर किया, मैं प्रॉफिट कैन बी रिकॉग्नाइज्ड ओनली इन रेस्पेक्ट ऑफ ओनरशिप राइट्स। इन रेस्पेक्ट ऑफ यूसेज राइट्स उसका प्रॉफिट तो मैं रिकॉग्नाइज नहीं कर पाऊंगा, बिकॉज वो तो मेरे पास है ना, आई स्टिल हैव द यूसेज विथ मी। यस सो नाउ कमिंग टू, वेट आई एम कमिंग टू दैट। ओके तो नाउ कमिंग टू द अकाउंटिंग, अब कैसे होगा? आपको ये 11,93 should be fairly clear with you right now, 11,93. Okay now coming to the apportionment, coming to the apportionment, देखो आपके पास बुक वैल्यू ऑफ एसेट 15 लाख है, 27 लाख में आपने बेच दिया, बाद में आपको वही एसेट 11,93,889 पे मिला। सर आर यू पेइंग मोर देन द मार्केट रेंट? आइडियली यस, मेरा एक्चुअली प्रेजेंट वैल्यू था 14,93,889, करेक्ट। उसमें से देयर इज अ फाइनेंसिंग कंपोनेंट ऑफ 3 lakhs, सो देयरफॉर डेडिकेटेड लीज लायबिलिटी और लीज पेमेंट का प्रेजेंट वैल्यू कितना होगा? 11,93,889। सर प्रेजेंट वैल्यू ऑफ डेडिकेटेड लीज पेमेंट्स यानी दिस इज द मार्केट लीज पेमेंट्स। सर मार्केट लीज पेमेंट्स मतलब क्या? मार्केट लीज पेमेंट्स मतलब इसमें प्रॉफिट एलिमेंट इज ऑलरेडी इंक्लूडेड, इसमें प्रॉफिट एलिमेंट इज ऑलरेडी इंक्लूडेड। वो प्रॉफिट एलिमेंट हमें हटाना पड़ेगा, वी विल हैव टू रिमूव दैट प्रॉफिट एलिमेंट। So why? Because the same asset is coming back to me. ये एसेट का टोटल वैल्यू 15 लाख है, जिसमें से मैंने ओनरशिप तो हटा दिया, यूसेज मेरे पास है, तो यूसेज का कॉस्ट वैल्यू कितना है, कॉस्ट एलिमेंट कितना है, वी विल हैव टू फाइंड दैट आउट एंड दैट इज डन बाय a simple cross multiplication, 11,93 into 15 divided by 27। तो इस ओनरशिप एलिमेंट का कॉस्ट कितना हुआ? 6,63,272। तो ये हो गया मेरा कॉस्ट, और मेरा ROU एसेट विल बी रिकॉग्नाइज्ड एट 6,63,272। Is this much clear till now? कौशिकी, अनिकेत, सुमित, यहां तक बात समझ में आ गया आपको? इट्स नॉट रिकॉग्नाइज्ड एट फेयर वैल्यू, इट इज रिकॉग्नाइज्ड एट कॉस्ट. It is recognized at cost by way of a proportionate computation. By way of a proportionate computation. अब आगे बढ़ते हैं ये प्रॉफिट का, 12 lakhs का प्रॉफिट. Now, how do I recognize this 12 lakhs का प्रॉफिट? How do I recognize this 12 lakhs का प्रॉफिट? Okay, 1 second. I have a query. All right. Okay. ठीक है. ऑल राइट. नाउ ये 12 लाख का प्रॉफिट है. 12 लाख का प्रॉफिट कितने में मिला, किसके लिए आया? क्योंकि मैंने बिल्डिंग बेच दिया. क्योंकि मैंने बिल्डिंग बेच दिया. अब मैंने बिल्डिंग तो बेचा, बिल्डिंग बेचने पर मैंने उसको तुरंत लीज पे ले लिया. आई हैव टेकन इट ऑन लीज. नाउ बिकॉज आई हैव टेकन इट ऑन लीज, मुझे सिर्फ इतना बताओ, कैन आई रिकॉग्नाइज एंटायर प्रॉफिट ऑफ 12 lakhs, और मेरा प्रॉफिट 12 लाख के नीचे होना चाहिए? व्हाट डू यू थिंक? शुड आई रिकॉग्नाइज एंटायर 12 लाख प्रॉफिट, or should I recognize the profit only in relation to those rights which I have received? Only in relation to the rights which I have. Yes? क्या लगता है आपको? मैं पूरा 12 लाख का प्रॉफिट रिकॉर्ड कर सकता हूं? आंसर इज नो. बिकॉज आपने थोड़ा सा एसेट ट्रांसफर किया, थोड़ा सा अपने पास रखा. इनटैंजिबल के हिसाब से सोचो, आपने ओनरशिप राइट ट्रांसफर किया, राइट ऑफ यूज यूसेज राइट्स आपके पास ही है. सो यू कैनॉट रिकॉग्नाइज एंटायर 12 लाख प्रॉफिट. 12 लाख प्रॉफिट तो आप रिकॉग्नाइज कर ही नहीं सकते हो. राइट्स रिटेन्ड, ये राइट्स वापस से आपके पास आ रहे हैं. सो मेरा मेरा टोटल प्रॉफिट कितना होता? सर मेरा टोटल प्रॉफिट होता था 12 lakhs. मेरा टोटल प्रॉफिट था 12 lakhs. दिस 12 lakhs is in respect of sale value of 27. But out of sale value of 27, मुझे कितने मिल रहे हैं राइट्स वापस? वापस कितने का आ रहा है? 11,93,000. इतने का राइट्स मेरे पास आ रहे हैं वापस इन द फॉर्म ऑफ यूसेज राइट्स. ये यूसेज राइट का वैल्यू 11,93,000 इज नथिंग बट द लीज लायबिलिटी. इतने के राइट्स तो मेरे पास वापस घूम के आ रहे हैं. दैट मीन्स व्हाट? ये राइट तो कभी गया ही नहीं. ये राइट कभी गया ही नहीं, तो इसका प्रॉफिट मैं कैसे रिकॉग्नाइज करूंगा? सो देयरफॉर दिस प्रपोर्शनेट राइट्स जो है, I will not recognize the profit on this. So 12 lakhs into 11.93 by 27, 5,30,000 का जो rights retained है, इसका related profit 5,30,000. I am not going to record. I am not going to record this profit. तो आप क्या रिकॉर्ड करोगे? यार जो मैंने राइट्स ट्रांसफर किए ना, उसके रिलेटेड प्रॉफिट आई एम गोइंग टू रिकॉर्ड. सो उसका वैल्यू कितना है? 6,69,382. This is the profit in relation to the ownership rights which are transferred. यार जो मैंने बेचा, सिर्फ उसके रिलेशन का प्रॉफिट मैं रिकॉग्नाइज कर सकता हूं. जो मैंने नहीं बेचा उसका मैं कैसे रिकॉग्नाइज करूंगा? सो 5,30,000 is in relation to ownership rights, sorry, is in relation to usage rights that are with me. So that profit I won't recognize. What I will recognize is जो rights मैंने ट्रांसफर किए हैं, those rights are what I am going to recognize. So 6,69,382 will be the profit which I will book on this transaction. So 30 lakhs debit, 6,63,000 the cost of the usage rights which I have now retained. Credit, the building is actually getting sold. I have a financial liability of 3 lakhs. I have a lease liability of 1193,888 and I have a gain on transfer of rights 6,69,382. Is it okay? Yes. Kaushiki, beta अच्छे से समझा आपको? Did you understand it very well? Yes. Aniket, समझा? Sumit, did you understand? Okay, so हम no problem. Let me know if you have understood. Okay. So हम Veer Murali, did you understand? Saksham, आपको समझा? Yes. Did you follow? Yes, completely understood. Okay, excellent. All right. So this is how the sale and leaseback will be recorded. अभी तक बात खत्म नहीं हुई है वैसे. अभी वो लीज पेमेंट आप करोगे ना, you are making payment of lease rentals 2 lakhs. This payment is made towards two things. One is towards the lease liability and other is towards the financing component. Your total liability is worth 14,93,888. So let me split it up. 11,93,000 is towards the lease liability. 3 lakhs is towards financial liability. So out of 2 lakhs, 159,836 goes towards lease liability. Balancing 41,163 or the proportionate calculation goes towards financial liability. Sir, zero hoga? Definitely zero hoga. That is what I have done in the next page for you. Okay. 11,93,888. This is the lease liability. Every month, every year, I'm paying 159,836. At the end, it is coming to zero. Financial liability, starting with 3 lakhs, and it becomes zero with the repayment of 40,163 per year, whatever is the payment. Okay. We have calculated this split here. This split I have calculated here. So we have shown this split here. Have you understood this part? Have you understood this part? Are you convinced now about the way the accounting happens? Yes. Are you convinced? All clear? So repayment also we covered, amortization of financial liability also we covered, and we also covered how the sale and leaseback transaction happens. How the sale and leaseback transaction happens. Okay. So this takes care of sale and leaseback. Okay. Presentation of the answer. Just follow these steps. Okay. Whatever is in typed calculations, no? Just follow that. You should be getting full marks. You should be getting full marks. Okay. ये जो कुछ भी अभी मैंने होली खेली है ना यहाँ पे, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. Okay. All right. Okay. Fine. ठीक है. अच्छा, what will be the implication in the books of the lessor? Lessor के केस में he is paying 30 lakhs. For that, he is getting a building worth 27 lakhs and 3 lakhs extra he is giving as a financial asset, which he will amortize and recognize the income, which he will amortize and recognize the finance income. That's it. That's about it. Okay. So that takes care of sale and leaseback. For exams, stick to the concepts. Okay. Stick to the concepts. So if the question like this comes, you will have to briefly explain the standard. Like you will have to say that this is a sale and leaseback. Ind AS 116 gives this guidance. So you will then mention what is the guidance. Like sale consideration in excess of fair value is regarded as a financing component. This is on the presumption that when the lease rents are charged, they will be higher than the market rent to compensate for the financing component, which we have now taken. And thereafter, you will proceed with the calculations. Thereafter, you will proceed with the calculations. Okay. So this is all about sale and leaseback. Let us come back to our theory. Okay. All right. So derecognize underlying asset. We derecognized at 15 lakhs. We recorded the sale transaction, derecognized the asset, and we recognized proportionate gain or loss only in respect of ownership rights which are transferred. Okay. If the sale happens at off-market terms, you will have to make an adjustment for the difference between fair value and sale price. or the difference between present value of lease payments and present value of fair lease payments. Contractual and fair lease payments, whichever is more readily determinable. So this is what we did, hidden financing component. This is only that adjustment, okay, hidden financing component. So if selling price is more than the fair value, in our example, selling price was 30, fair value was 27, or present value of actual rent is greater than present value of market rent, then what do we presume? It is a hidden loan arrangement which involves repayment in the form of excess payments. So what are you going to do? Reduce the selling price by the loan element. Reduce the selling price by the loan element. Do the accounting. We have done that. अच्छा, opposite हो सकता है? क्यों नहीं हो सकता? Selling price less than the fair value. So sometimes the buyer wants this property, but उसके पास पैसे नहीं रहते. So what you tell? ठीक है, you pay me little less. You give it back to me on lease at a price lower than the market rent. So therefore, this is a hidden prepaid rent. Hidden prepaid rent. I have paid the rent in advance, and in the future, I am paying lower than the market value. So you will do a similar adjustment with a corresponding increase adjustment to the ROU asset. With a corresponding adjustment to the ROU asset. Okay. I will be sharing the Excel file. What I want you to do is, in the Excel file, you try to work out an example based on this condition. And at the most, if you want, you can mail it to me at fr-final@icai.in. I need you to think on this. I need you to think about this and get me the answer. You should be able to work it out. Okay. Steps I have discussed. Accounting when selling price is more than fair value. Accounting when selling price is less than fair value. Less than fair value. Okay. So this takes care of sale and lease back. Transition, I skip it for homework, because one thing is transition already ho chuka in terms of 1/4/2019. Everybody has transitioned. So the only transitions which you are having is Ind AS 101. That is first time adoption of Ind AS. Any entity now voluntarily wants to go, or they now start meeting the criteria, then you will move to Ind AS 101. Otherwise, there is no other transition approach. So therefore, this one question, I will be leaving it for homework. You please go through this part. It's a simple question. I have included the answer in the Excel file, which I am going to share. Okay. It's simple. Then we move on to lease modifications. Lease modifications could involve either or all of the three. That is change in consideration. Consideration means your lease rent will change. Change in tenure, that is the lease term, or change in scope. Example, the property area increases. Okay. Okay. So now coming to lease modification, you can treat it as a separate lease. So you already have an existing lease. You are modifying that lease only. So you can treat it as a separate lease if the additional right of use is in respect of lease arrangement obtained. That means you had taken, suppose, an area of 2000 square meters initially. Now you are taking 3000. So extra 1000 you are taking. That extra 1000 is it can be regarded as a separate lease if the additional right of use is obtained. I got extra right of use plus the additional right of use is commensurate with the standalone selling price. Reasonable discount like advertising nahi hoga, selling expenses not there. So little bit reasonable discount is permitted. If that is the case, then you treat the extra 1000 square meters what you are paying as a separate lease. Do not alter the existing lease. You will have another lease. So you will have two lease agreements. Two lease ROU assets and liabilities, though you have only one contract, because this modification is regarded as a separate lease. Okay. So you can go through this as a homework, not a problem. Then it may so happen that there is no separate lease created. Instead, you would be having an increase or decrease in consideration. That means your asset is becoming more or less valuable. Asset, ROU asset is becoming valuable or is becoming less valuable. Then you are having increase in lease term. That means the tenure increases. 5 years becomes 8 years. The next one is increase in scope, but it is not at standalone price. Alternatively, you could have decrease in lease term, 8 years to 5 years, or decrease in scope. If it is increase in scope, you remeasure the lease liability with a corresponding adjustment to ROU asset. And if this is the case, you proportionately de-recognize the lease liability and ROU asset with a gain or loss taken to the P&L. Here, there won't be any gain or loss because you are not de-recognizing anything. You are just increasing the value of the existing lease liability and corresponding adjustment in the ROU asset. Okay. So this is with respect to lease modifications. Unfortunately, we don't have time to discuss these questions. So what I want you to do is go through these questions. I'm available on email, so I can explain to you, but all the modification questions are there here. See, if you just apply the principles, you will be in a position to understand. I have given it in as self-explanatory method as possible. So you should not be having much of a difficulty in getting the answer to this. What I will do is, I'll see if I can discuss one question relating to modification. Okay. We will discuss one question relating to modification. Okay. So now this is a 10-year lease arrangement for 2000 square meters. The lease amount is 1 lakh payable at the end of each year. Okay. The interest rate implicit cannot be determined. Therefore, you use the borrowing rate of 6% per annum. At the beginning of year 6, the lessee and lessor agree to amend the original lease to include additional 1500 square meters. So this is increase in scope. This is increase in scope, and reduce the lease term from 10 years to 8 years. Annual fixed payment for the 3500 square meters is 1,50,000 from year 6 to year 8. Lessee's incremental borrowing rate at the beginning of the year 6 is 7% per annum. Consideration for increase in scope is not commensurate with the standalone price. Consequently, lessee does not account for the increase in scope as a separate lease. How do you record the said modification? My method is slightly different compared to the institutes, but answer comes to be almost the same. Okay. I have not considered rounding off. Institute considers the rounding off. Only for that reason, the answers are different. Otherwise, my method, institute's method, minor difference, but it's not a difference in concept. Okay. Concept wise, it is exactly the same. Okay. तो क्या था मेरे पास on the first day of the original lease liability, this is what I have worked out. 1 lakh, 6%, 10 years. So this is the present value of lease liability and the corresponding ROU asset. मैंने 5 साल किया. I have continued with this for 5 years. So on the date of modification, beginning of 6th year, this would be the liability. This would be the liability, 4,21,000. Asset also would be 7,36,000. You would depreciate for 5 years. 3,68,000 would be the value of your asset. Now what is happening is the lease term is reducing from 10 years to 8 years. That means total lease term was 10, it became 8. That means remaining lease term is 5, it became 3. So your ROU asset, it was 3,68,000 at end of year 5. Now you only have remaining 3 years left. So you will have to de-recognize 2 years. You will have to de-recognize 2 years. So 368 divided by 5 into 3 I will keep, into 2 I will de-recognize. Okay. Then you come to lease liability. 4,21,000 is your liability. This liability is going to be retained for the 3 years. For the 3 years. Which 3 years? Year 6, 7 and 8. So this will be present value annuity factor, not 6%. This is going to be, I think, 7%, because the rate has changed, no? Yes, it is 7% per annum. So here this will be 7%, only printing mistake. Otherwise, the calculations are correct. So your lease liability, you will bring it down to 2,67,000, and 1,53,000 is what you are going to derecognize. So what will be the journal entry? Derecognize 1,53,000 lease liability, derecognize ROU asset 1,47,000. The difference is the gain or loss on modification. It is a gain. 6,733 will go to your profit and loss. Institute's answer, this is 6,610. The difference is on account of rounding off. You can ignore that. Okay. This is on account of rounding off. So you can ignore it. Okay. All right. But at the same time, the scope has also increased. At the same time, the scope has also increased. And because the scope has increased, what are you going to do? 1,50,000 into 2.6243, 3,93,000. This is the fresh liability. But out of that, 2,67,000 you have already recognized. So you will be recognizing balance liability of 1,26,000. So ROU asset to lease liability, 1,26,000 is what you will be passing. This is extra right of use. You got extra space. So ROU asset also increases and lease liability also increases, and the balance in the ROU asset is going to be this. Balance is going to be 3,47,182. Is it okay? Yes. So this is about lease modifications. Okay. What I have not touched much is on head lease, is on sublease. It's theory. Please go through that. Acha, there was an amendment in Ind AS 116. Amendment bhi aa gaya? Yes, because COVID aa gaya. There was a COVID related amendment. That COVID related amendment is now deleted from the syllabus because COVID khatam, amendment khatam. So you will not have COVID related concessions in your examinations. This announcement will also come on the RTPs that will be issued henceforth, and therefore COVID related amendment will not be coming in your examinations. COVID related amendments are not going to come in your examinations. Is it okay? Yes. So that takes care of your lease modifications. Okay. I was a little fast. Please pardon me for that. You will have to have a look at the session probably once again, because there was a lot to cover and I did not have much time. Okay. So therefore, 1 second. 0.935, 0.873. 816. Okay, 1 second. This has to be 6% only. This is correct. This is also correct. Okay. So yeah, this is how it will be. And there was somewhere some printing mistake in the solution. 842 point. Yeah, the printing mistake was there here. I'll make the changes. Okay. So this is how you will do the modifications. Okay, two things which I am leaving with you, 2-3 things which I have left. One is transition. Go through that. Here there is a question on transition approach. So please go through that. This is the transition approach. So transition approach means what? On the initial date, it was an operating lease. Now you will have to recognize an ROU asset and lease liability. So this will be a full retrospective approach, modified retrospective approach. Okay. So that is what you will do the accounting based on that. Okay. So go through transition. It's not difficult. Whatever we have discussed, it's pretty much there in the approach. Yes. Modified retrospective approach, you have two alternatives. Go through that. You will then be in a position to understand. I have given a detailed solution to this. I'll be sharing this working, say, by today evening or tomorrow evening. So you should get back. Then what will be left is go through the modification questions. I have discussed it, but you can look at decrease in modification separate, increase in modification separate, and finally you can look at the impact of both separately. Okay. So go through that. And then there is a reassessment of lease liabilities. Reassessment happens because of that variable lease payments. So the variable lease payments, you will modify the lease contract when the cash flows change. So when the cash flows change, from that date, you will have an effective second lease working to be calculated. And basis that, your lease asset and lease liability, both of that are going to get modified, and the impact of that will be taken accordingly. So these are 2-3 things which I have not been able to discuss due to paucity of time, but I believe that you should be in a position to take this forward. Okay. So far, any doubts or any difficulties? Yes. Any difficulties? We'll see. I don't know, but we'll see if we get a chance. Maybe sometime later we could have a small session to sort out your queries on this standard and any other standards which I have discussed. Okay, we'll see if we can sort out the doubts relating to that. Okay, so without fail, please check up reassessments of lease. Okay, it is important. Please go through that. Modifications I have discussed. You can look at the examples. You should be fine. Go through lease, head lease, sublease, etc. Yes, that is sublease arrangements. You उसमें ज़्यादा कुछ questions भी नहीं हैं. Okay, so sublease, how to recognize, you will be able to understand. Okay. Simple hai. Basically, a sublease is you have an original lessor, you have an intermediate lessor, and you have a sublessee. So for the intermediate fellow, he is a lessee for one transaction and a lessee for the other transactions. So you will just have to see what the accounting treatment will happen. Okay. So if the head lease is a short-term lease, this will always be a operating lease. Sublease will always be an operating lease. Intermediate lessor cannot account for head lease as a lease of low value asset. Then if it is a finance lease, you will de-recognize the ROU asset if the sublease is a finance lease. If it is an operating lease, you will recognize ROU asset and lease liability, and here you will recognize the rental income as usual. Okay, so this is all that is there. Original lease liability not recognized, it continues to exist. Okay, so very simple. Sublease, it's not difficult. You should be able to understand. Try this RTP question for homework. It was there. And yeah, so that should kind of conclude the standard. I don't have anything much to discuss. If we get a chance, if we get the time, I would surely like to discuss more on reassessment and modifications so that you would be comfortable. We'll check. Okay, if that is done, then we'll probably have another session. Okay, but as of now, standard is done. We'll see you guys next Thursday with, I think, 2 standards are left for this month from my side, 102 and Ind AS 33. So what I would suggest is, as an alternative, please go through the sessions which were already covered in the previous batch on Ind AS 102, particularly Ind AS 33, Why Ind AS 33? Because normally Ind AS 33, I used to get 3 sessions. This time we are having 2 sessions. It will be more of a summary sessions. So whatever extra questions I did in that batch, I will not be able to do it here. So I request you to please go through Ind AS 33, at least from the previous batch. So whatever we will be doing, it will be fast and your concepts also will be ready. Okay, so with this we conclude today's sessions. Thank you everyone, and see you next Thursday. See you guys next Thursday. Okay, take care everyone, stay safe, and keep in touch. Okay, you can mail me without any problems. I will always be there. Okay, all right. So ठीक है, we end for the day. Yes, Nisarg,